you doing, Slick Hawk?
Great. How are you?
Well, stretching here. What's on your mind today?
The Mariners are leaders in the wild card.
Well, don't do that. I'm about to do that.
Oh, well, you asked what's
Slick
going
Hawk,
on.
Does Slick Hawk have something? Slick Hawk's got something
Slick
to
Hawk's
say.
got something to say.
It doesn't have as good a ring to it.
Preseason football last night was awesome.
Oh, geez. Who played? I don't even know.
It was the Texans and Panthers. Deshaun Watson, by the way, looks every bit the part that I thought he would. And I think that he's going to be a steal in somebody's fantasy league this year.
You know what I have to say?
Yeah.
You know what I have to say?
Yeah.
Is that how long have you been working here?
5 years.
Honestly, how many times have you heard Hugh Millen, either on or off the air, complain that he doesn't have a cough button?
Countless times.
Is it 100?
Could be.
Okay. He's got a cough button now. They actually gave him a cough button.
Kidding.
And he's still making noise, and he doesn't know how to use it. He still doesn't press the... Look at him. Why don't you press it now? Now, press it before you put those things... Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
How'd you do that? That was pretty good.
It's pretty smooth, huh?
How you put that on without making noise. There you go.
Is this the thing where he has to push it 3 times?
No, he's got an actual cough, but he bitched and moaned. It took years and years. It took 123 Kelly Lichtenwald references to get the cough button. Now he's got the cough button, and I mean, come on. I mean, really? He needs a tutorial.
It's a real strain to work with such perfection. A guy who never makes a mistake in the radio business over here, right?
Let me ask you a question.
Just the perfect execution, huh?
Do you need Tyler? Do you need somebody to give you an education on how to use?
And by the way, when I started going here, the Husky Honk Show, we'd go on the road, we'd be local, everywhere. It was just a rite of passage.
Here we go. Here we go. Here comes number 127.
I assume that's just part of the gig, is that you have a cough button, and it comes in useful.
Yeah.
Hugh,
yeah.
I've done.
Well, how about using it?
Hugh, I've done remotes at Jimmy's. I've done remotes at
Never had
Dub
one.
Pub.
Never had one.
Never seen a cough button.
Well, I can tell you it was.
Do you need me to teach you how to use it?
Okay. All right. I'm not in your ass.
Anyway, can I give you some headlines, Slickhawk? We've stretched enough. The email is up on my screen now. It's Thursday at the VMAC. Jermaine Ifedi and Frank Clark practicing again. Clark on a limited basis. Shaq Griffin picked off. Were you here for Shaq Griffin's pickoff of Russell Wilson and return for a touchdown?
Yeah. What?
That was
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
You mean our 7:30 guest?
Our 7:30 guest.
That was not a errant throw. That was a misread by Russell Wilson. He had an outbreaking route by an inside receiver.
I'm doing headlines now. Do you want to do it now, or you want to let me finish?
You brought it up.
I know. I brought it up. I brought it up in the headlines. I was going to actually give you the floor on yesterday's practice, but I need to get through the headlines.
There's a structure to these things, Hugh.
I'm afraid that if you start now, it'll be like
engage me in dialogue.
It'll be 45 after before I go back to the headlines. Why don't you teach me the
sign language that says when you engage me in dialogue that I don't respond?
Well, no, you can respond, but how about like a quick I was here yesterday. It was great.
Misread coverage.
Boom.
How about that?
Yeah.
How long did that take?
Misread coverage by Russell. Misread coverage by
Apparently
Russell.
50 seconds.
Wait a second. Are you taking a shot at Russell Wilson?
No, I'm not taking a shot at Russell Wilson at all.
You said misread coverage.
I think a lot of people have this image when you throw an interception.
It's headlines time.
Oh, my God. When are you two going to have your Frank Clark
It's
Jermaine Ifedi moment?
6:04:39.
I love this guy.
It's working toward
God,
that.
do I love
it really
this
is.
He pulls in next to me, or I pulled in, as the case is today. I pull in next to him.
Right.
And like in one day, maybe it's just because I didn't notice, his car has gone to hell in a handbag. He's got all kinds of damage. And I'm afraid, you know what I'm afraid? He's got all kinds of damage on his car on the side that I always park on. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, he's not over there thinking that I'm doing all this damage to his car parking on the passenger side.
Are you door dinging him?
He's got like all kinds. He's got molding pulled off of his car.
Oh.
He's got, apparently he had a fight with a barricade that he lost.
You never win that.
Yeah. And he says to me on the way in, he says,
remember the tank traps we talked about on day one here?
The what?
The tank traps.
Yeah. He hit him.
It got me.
He hit
him.
The
damn thing got me.
He hit the barricade. And,
the jersey barriers?
Yeah, the big things.
Yeah.
Are you
2-ton thing.
serious?
He hit him. Yeah.
Yeah, I scraped it. It was all.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
And then he blames that there was a lot of people walking, milling about, and
Well, you can't see them. That's the problem. You can't see them. I got my seat sits a little elevated. You can't see the damn thing. I don't know. I'm getting old, Slick.
My God.
driving.
You know, I get my wife grief all the time. Do you have zero depth perception? By the way,
Yeah.
might piss a lot of people off by saying this. It's factual. Women have less perception.
Oh,
depth
I'm doing the
perception.
headlines here. I'm doing the headlines. Let me get back to the
But they're
headlines.
also very
before you
good
go
at
there.
What guy has not given his wife grief?
Is
about
that true that women have less depth perception
for,
than men?
for like parallel parking, that type of thing? Now, that's on average. That's on average.
Oh, God.
Hey, don't blame me.
Jeez.
I'm not the guy who did the
Really?
studies, but I've read about it.
Women.
Huh?
Don't blame me. Blame the women.
Oh, jeez.
No, yeah, but I'm driving like a chick, running into stuff.
Oh,
You
jeez.
can't
Listen,
say
oh,
that.
can you just stop
You
him now?
can't do that.
Stop
dude.
him now, for God's sakes.
No.
Mariners did it again. Overcame a lousy starting pitching performance by Yovani Gallardo. Offense plus bullpen equals sole possession of wild card number 2. Kansas City and Tampa Bay both lost. Mariners now, if the season ended today, which it doesn't, and it's stupid to even talk about, the Mariners would be in the playoffs with no clean as a whistle into the wild card playoffs. Nelson Cruz 2 homers. Kyle Seager had 3-run shot. The bullpen 4 2/3 innings of 1 hit, no run baseball. Today, a 4-game series here begins with the Angels. James Paxton against Tyler Skaggs of the Angels. Indians acquire Jay Bruce. Michael Porter's younger brother, Jante, reclassifies. He'll be a freshman this year at Missouri with his older brother and his dad on the bench as assistant coach. That's going to be an interesting situation to
What
watch.
does reclassify mean?
He was supposed to be he's a junior,
Yeah.
but he's homeschooled. So he has enough credits to graduate if he wanted to, I guess. He has whatever you need to have to graduate. So he wants to play at Missouri this year as opposed to he was to be playing next year, and he's going to be on the team this year with his brother and his father. PGA Championship is underway in Charlotte. I am so late today that I don't have a leaderboard to share with you at this moment, but it can't be much. It's only 9:08. Well, 9:08. It can be much.
Yeah, Russell Knox, it looks like, is the leader.
Is our
2
guy
under,
teed off
tied
yet?
with Chris Wood. No. Dustin Johnson will tee off at, I guess he has now. Sorry.
Okay.
This is not updated.
Okay. All right, that's enough for the headlines. Now we can talk about depth perception and women's
KJR AM, KJR FM HD2 Seattle, an iHeart radio station. This is Mitch in the Morning.
Would you like to apologize for your driving like a chick comment right now before we begin?
Do I need to?
No. It's up to you. Think about
Well,
it. Consider all the circumstances. Would you like to right away apologize for I'm driving like a chick to imply that women don't drive well?
Well, yeah, if need be.
I know,
I'm
I
not
don't
a
know.
very politically correct guy. You know, I will say this: I'm married 19 years, and I think if you got Mrs. Millen on the phone and it said, gauge the respect level that your husband has for you and for women.
Yeah.
I think she would be very, very effusive in that regard.
Okay.
We have a very,
Okay.
very close marriage. I think the world of her. I think of her as my equal, but we have fun just kind of teasing about, the difference between men and women. So, if need be, I'm not looking to offend anybody. I think there's some tongue-in-cheek aspect of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of obvious. Driving like a chick. I'm playing into stereotypes. That may or may not be true.
Is there a stereotype that women don't
Well,
drive
I think there's
well?
a stereotype that dudes, particularly younger dudes, like
Yeah.
to think that chicks can't drive as well. Yeah, I think there's a stereotype about that. As I said, I think there is a study out there that said that women, again, general. I'm sure a bell curve that a woman who's good at depth perception is better than a man who's average at depth perception. But there is a study out there. Don't blame me. I didn't do the study.
Yeah.
So
You sure there's a study? You're not making that up now.
No, I'm certain.
Okay.
I'm certain.
All right.
I'm certain
All
about
right.
it.
All right. Well, so you're
Not that I went looking for it. I can't remember how I encountered it. It was probably one of those. Those things. What's with the internet now? They lure you into those those headlines. I mean,
we talk
oh
about
my
it all the
God,
time.
do they suck you into mouse clicks or
yeah.
what?
Did they get you with the tennis photos?
Huh?
Did they get you with the tennis photos?
They get me with everything. If
So
you
somewhere, I
if
know I
you
didn't go
thought
looking
so
for
and so was hot then, wait till you see
Yeah.
how she looks now.
It's like the
me every-
23rd slide.
Believe it, and she had no idea what happened.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Dress malfunction. Top 20 dress malfunctions. Okay, so the Shaq Griffin interception.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hugh.
Well,
I didn't see it. I was here. It must have happened after I left.
So one of the things when you have a 2-by-2 formation and you have an outside receiver to your left and then you have a slot receiver in your left, and the slot receiver, the inside receiver is on an out-breaking route. Could be a quick out, could be an out at 10 yards, could be a corner route, what have you. But when you have an out route breaking, in this case 6 to 8 yards, you know that the corner is going to be aligned. What we call the number one defender is going to be aligned over top of the outside receiver. So you're looking at the posture of the number 2 defender. That's what you count outside in on the defender, and you ignoring the safety. So the number one defender is always the corner. If he's 15 yards off, he's the number one defender. If he's in press coverage, he's the number one defender. The number 2 defender is the shallow. He's at the linebacker overhang depth, what we call apex. There's a lot of terms, but the number 2 defender is the guy over the slot. So as a quarterback, if you're throwing an out-breaking route, you have to know what the number 1 defender is doing.
Even though
you
he's
assume
not,
that he's going to get
not the
cleared
one
out.
that's on the receiver at before the snap. That's going
No,
to
he is.
throw it
The
to.
number one defender is the guy on the outside.
I know, but he's not on the defender. You're talking about an out-breaking route from the slot guy,
Yeah,
right?
the slot guy. He's not over the slot.
He's not over the slot guy.
So
you're
the
telling
play
me
concept.
So Shaq was on the outside guy.
The play, yes.
And the inside guy did something of an out.
To the out.
And Shaq came up and stepped in and made the play.
It's a common concept where the outside receiver's running a clear out.
Yeah.
And the quarterback can make the assumption that he's going to clear that defender out. But we used to call it bird dog. There's other terms where that corner can kind of bait you in, and it's essentially cloud coverage. Cloud is a term where the corner has the flat, and so Russ kind of locked in to the inside receiver, and there was Shaq just kind of waiting in.
Look what I found. So
yeah.
it wasn't much of a play by Shaq. It was just thrown right
no,
to him.
it was a nice. He still had to battle for the ball, and there was a physicality to it.
Oh, really?
There was a little bit of a collision as it occurred, and so he had to show some strength there, but it wasn't.
And then he went all the way. Then there's nobody there.
No, yeah, I mean, because it's a short out route to the sideline.
Right.
And actually, Russ got on his horse. He did catch him.
Really?
Yeah, I think he would have been in a position. Obviously, nobody's tackling out there, but I don't think it would have been a pick six. Now, it was down by the 20-yard line.
Now, how is Russell Wilson running down Shaq Griffin?
I think right when he saw it,
he had an angle.
You're like, oh God, and
he's got an angle.
Yeah, and well,
Russell Wilson's got the angle on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the time,
because I was thinking that Shaq Griffin was so fast.
There was a slight delay that Griffin had to, as I said, there was a collision.
Yeah.
At the point of contact, but anyway, it was
just more optimism around Shaq Griffin. Just another reason to be optimistic, or was it just anybody would have? Jeremy Lane would have made that play. Anybody would have made the play.
No, I would not put it in that category. I think that kind of how he did it, and he lurked and made a great jump on the ball. As I said, there was a little bit of a little bit of bump, a little bit of a physical exchange, and he had to physically take the ball. So no, I would not say it wasn't Larry Brown in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
If you remember the Neil O'Donnell reference, where you just throw it right in his belly button.
Right. Okay. Today on the radio, you could kill the music. Today on the radio program, we're live from the VMAC. We got a lot to do. The Seahawks at 7, 45 minutes from right now. We always start the 7 o'clock hour with the Seahawks at 7 and Greg Bell, Seahawks Insider, to get all the news of practice yesterday, what everybody was saying, what everybody was talking about, the news and storylines as we get to 2 or 3 days before the first preseason game. The Seahawks at 7 with Greg Bell at 7 o'clock. 7:10, right after Greg Bell is over. In the same segment, Steve Phillips on the Mariners surge to the number 2 wild card spot. They now own it by themselves. All year long, we're watching them scratch and claw and trying to stay alive and trying to bridge the gap and try to make some sort of a run. And all of a sudden, here we are on August the 10th, and the Seattle Mariners have it all themselves. A combination of winning baseball and the teams around them just losing, kind of falling by the wayside, has presented an unbelievable opportunity for the Seattle Mariners. And don't look now, the Yankees are just a couple of games ahead of them for wild card number 1. Now, what's the difference between wild card number 1 and wild card number 2? Home playoff game.
Yeah.
Wild card number 1 would host wild card number 2 in the home playoff. So that's a decent perk for the number 1. So we'll talk to Steve Phillips about that. Our first visit, at least on the morning show, I don't know about the other shows, our first visit was Shaq Griffin. He will sit right in the bird poop chair, right there, the BPC. Okay. The bird poop chair. Right. Shaq Griffin will be. Have you ever talked to Shaq Griffin?
Yeah, we interviewed him when he got drafted.
Okay.
Our coverage
nice
here
guy,
at the BMAC,
engaging guy.
Very much so. Very much so. No, I'm going to make a prediction.
Yes.
He's gonna ruffle the headphones.
No, he's not, because I'm going to have it off. Okay. I'm going to use the cough button.
Okay, all right.
I know how to use the cough button.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he's going to walk away.
Yeah.
And you're going to turn to me and say, "I like that kid."
Really?
Yes.
We're talking personally now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look at the way he's built, the way he's shaved, the ass being up next to the neck.
No, I think that you, halfway up.
His ass is way up there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
That's a good thing.
I hope you understand. I'm not going to refer to that.
I'm going to keep telling you that.
Means he's high cut,
that
Mitch.
John Schneider told me, quote, "Body profiling is a huge part of what we do." End quote. So they body profile. I body profile, because if you've been around athletes
so what's
long
the
enough,
advantage of an ass being up by your neck?
There's a correlation. A high cut athlete.
Is there any way that you can tie in an ass being up by your neck to women being poor drivers? Is there any way that you can tie those things together? Since you started with that this morning, or no? Is there no correlation between Shaq Griffin's ass and female
took a public
drivers?
Speaking class.
Can you do it?
And we went through a segment where they said, all right, we're going to go through segues. And we got up and we drew subjects out of a hat. You might pull potato out.
We did it.
And right. And then, and then you just have
I got
to
cookies
find
and cream
a way.
ice cream in my senior year in high school.
Yeah.
We did my senior year in high school. We took a public speaking class in my senior year in high school.
Yeah.
And the very first day, the headmaster, who was the coach, who was the teacher of the class, had a bucket of just random terms.
Yeah.
You had to, as a senior in high school, pull something out of the bucket and get up in front of the class and just shoot the crap and just talk about it.
Well,
somehow.
this one was similar, but then
we had
two topics,
you had
and you had to have a natural segue.
Yeah.
Well, I think women and their
no, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. I was just kidding. I don't want to get you. I don't want to get you or me in any more trouble that we're already in. Shaq Griffin will be with us. Hugh's got something to say at 8 o'clock today, folks. Dear show, ... at 7:45. We've got the phone poll. I'm going to tell you what that is here in a second. Pete Carroll at 8:45. Great debate at 9 o'clock. And a mini 12th man roundtable at 9:30. I got no help from Slickhawk on the poll question today. I just want to say that before I tell you my poll question today for the 50-yard line seats to see the Cardinals-Seahawks game.
Well, you didn't
ask
no help. For help.
No, I didn't ask for help. But I got no volunteered help.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with an answer. I had to come up with.
I assume unless you ask for help, you got this.
Well, it's coming up. You would think it's easy, but coming up with one every day that you kind of like, that you're excited about, is a little more difficult than it sounds. So I went back and forth on a couple of different ideas in the shower this morning.
Okay.
In the shower this morning. And I have concluded, and don't laugh at me, I've concluded here's my poll question of the morning. Let him cough. My poll question of the morning is, if Boykin and Davis struggle in the first couple of preseason games, would you bring in A, Colin Kaepernick, B, Robert Griffin III, C, stay the course with Boykin and Davis? Or D, none of the above, some other veteran play caller bring in to take a look? Yeah. Would you change, in other words, what would you do with the backup quarterback situation if in the first – we have seen in training camp for the most part, those two guys struggle.
Right.
So let's assume they go into Sunday night, they play a lot, and they look bad. And they go into the following week, and they play a lot, and they look bad. At what point, or at that point, after the second preseason game, you as a Seahawks fan play general manager? Would you stay the course? Stay the course with those two guys? Mm-hmm. Bring in Colin Kaepernick? Bring in Robert Griffin III? Or just bring in some other veteran quarterback that's without a job?
All right.
That's the poll question today. Is that fair?
Yeah.
It's a fair question?
I've got my answer.
Is that an awful question?
No, it's a good question.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I got your approval. Do I have your approval?
I think
Is it an okay question?
You're going to have to define struggle. I mean, how deep a hole are we digging here?
Okay. I'll try to do that. I don't know how to quantify. I don't know how to articulate that. Maybe you can help me do that.
It's an eyeball
It's
thing.
kind of something you once said on our show.
Yeah.
It's like porn. You know when you see it.
Yeah.
You know it when you see it.
Yeah.
Is that the expression?
Yeah, I'm not the author of that.
Yeah. So but that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like porn. You know it when you see it.
Are we talking about bad, or are we talking about, oh my God, bad?
Okay, well, let me think about that. 22 minutes after 6 o'clock, a heavy dose of Seahawks, a little Mariners wild card sprinkled in. It's the Thursday edition on 9:50.
The Morning Montage with Mitch in the Morning.
Oh, my goodness! Brought to you by Washington's Lottery. Visit walottery.com.
Fly ball, deep right field. Going back is Puig.
Yasiel Puig instead of the music? Is that what that was? That was a choice that you made?
It was the wrong button.
You pressed the wrong button? Are there a lot of buttons? You know, people drive around listening to us talk about buttons all the time. How many buttons are there?
Just looking at what I'm looking at is 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 24 buttons.
24 buttons.
Just on this page I'm looking at right now.
On a page on a computer screen?
Yes.
And are the buttons small buttons or large buttons?
They're large, but I mean they're right next to each other. So
if they're large, you would have less a chance of hitting the wrong button than you would if they were small buttons, right?
It's true.
Putting the arrow on the correct button and pressing the button correctly. And you went Yasiel Puig on us instead of the music. Okay. Mariners win. Mariners are in the wild card. Mariners keep winning. Mariners are returning home. It's the morning montage from the Carter Volkswagen studio. Here's how it sounded on Root Sports.
Absolutely destroyed. Nelson Cruz, they're never cheap, are they? Crushed. Number 25 is a 2-run shot, and the Mariners now have taken a 5-1 lead. Might there be another? Scorched once again. Watch out. Mount Davis right off the batter's eye. Multi-homer game.
A critical strikeout the night before.
Well, he had a couple opportunities the last couple of nights that he didn't come through on. But he came through yesterday, courtesy of Root Sports. There it is. Did you have the Ben Gamble catch at the wall?
I do and I don't.
What does that mean?
I do and I don't. I messed up the audio, so I got to re-put it in.
So you don't and you don't, as opposed to you do and you don't.
Well, I do and I don't.
Okay, you do and you don't. Mariners win. Mariners win. They sweep the 2-game little mini-series. And look what we have here, a team that's 3 games over 500 and in possession of wild card number 2. Can they hold on? Do you realize how bad the starting pitching has been in the midst of this winning streak? It's
yes,
crazy. They are terrible.
Isn't the ERA in like the 9s?
What did Giovanni? I was practicing. I was playing golf. What was how many? Did he even make it to the 4th inning, 5th inning, 3rd inning?
He made like 3 1/3.
Jesus.
No, he only gave up, 2 or 3 runs?
Well, he gave up like 3 runs and he had like 8 hits. And
yeah.
Come on, he was terrible.
I'm
for
just
God's
saying
sake.
how many runs he gave up. It could have been worse.
And then the bullpen came in and shut him down from that point on, right?
That's what they do.
All right. Deshaun Watson's NFL debut in a preseason game last
on 3rd down at the 15 of Carolina. Watson in the gun. Gets the snap.
Watson looking. Watson scrambling to the right. Watson running across the 10, the 5. Watson to the end zone. Touchdown, Texans. Deshaun Watson, 15-yard TD run. Welcome to the NFL.
You kind of like Deshaun Watson, don't you?
Yeah.
Personally, he strikes you as a real character guy, doesn't he?
Yeah, we talked a lot about that around the draft time. Just incredibly engaging. There's a humility to him, and his competitiveness, his ability to play in the clutch, but beyond his performance, I think just how he touches people. The more I was digging in on this guy and watching interviews and then watching interviews of what his coaches say about him and what his teammates say about him, I thought this guy was a rare individual just as a person. And I would love to play with this guy and play for him if I was another position.
Deshaun Watson yesterday. Vince Wilfork is retiring.
Only one thing I regret in my 13 years of playing NFL football is my parents didn't get a chance to see their son live out a dream he told them at the age of 4 I was going to be. Physically, it hurt every day. It hurt by the hour. Not a minute go by, but I know they have the best seat in the house. Thank you, David and Barbara Wilfork.
Tom Brady goes over some of the details of his dietary restrictions.
Look, it depends. We have a good selection in our cafeteria, but it's always something, obviously a lot of vegetables. God, there's a lot of things in there. Some like lean protein, maybe some fish.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So you can stay
healthy.
lean, mean, and
at 40, you got to
scoring
start
machine.
thinking about those things. Everything matters when you're 40.
Yeah, I don't think I would like the diet that Tom Brady's on.
Avocado ice cream.
Oh my God, really? I mean, how do you, come on, enjoy life a little bit, for God's sakes.
Well,
he says he might have a little fish. He said, like, the way he said fish in that audio was kind of like fish is a guilty pleasure of his.
Have you ever heard of Abe?
I'm of the opinion. I always thought that, geez, you have fish. Like, fish is not a guilty pleasure. That's what you should be eating. You should be eating
protein
fish.
and all that, yeah.
You should be eating fish. Fish is part of a good. And he's like, I might have a little fish. I'm like, what?
Hey, Mitch,
really?
Mitch,
Yeah.
what do you call a fish with no eyes?
Is this
dinner? Is that the answer?
I don't even think Hugh Millen gets it.
What?
The answer.
What? What I mean, I just.
Huh? No, he just gave the answer.
Oh.
You didn't hear his answer.
What'd he say? Oh.
Oh, Jesus, that's the most stupid thing.
Have you ever
I've
heard of
heard in my
Abraham
life.
Maslow and the hierarchy of needs?
No.
That you start at your base, you need your metabolic needs, and
You've gone through this with me before,
yeah,
but go ahead.
And
yeah.
then you have relationship
Yeah.
needs, and then you have
Yeah.
self-esteem needs at the very high of a pyramid. When you say what drives Bill Gates, what drives Michael Jordan, what drives Tiger Woods, the guys that have all the money, they've got everything. He termed it self-actualization, which is trying to reach a vision of what your very best can be. And the highest achievers, after all of the other needs have been taken care of and fulfilled, the highest need that we can have is that self-actualization. And very few people get to that point. And Tom Brady is in a state of self-actualization. And in his mind, as a 40-year-old, that diet is critical to his reaching his his image of his highest potential. So I think people like that are to be lauded in all fields. And if that's what's making it work, hey, maybe there's a physiological benefit, and maybe there's a psychological benefit, and maybe there's both.
This is way over my head.
Yeah, I don't know what you just said.
I whatever language he was speaking, I'm buying. But here's what I'll finish by saying. I don't want to live in the world where fish is a guilty pleasure.
You haven't
Ice
got
cream.
to the top of the pyramid.
Ice cream.
You haven't got to the top of the pyramid?
Well, I'm just a simple man. Ice cream is a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Not fish.
Mm-hmm.
Fish you eat, and while you're eating it, you're like, all right, I guess I got to eat fish. You don't think of fish as, oh, I can have a little fish today and it won't ruin me. I don't think of it that way, okay?
I think he's thinking this in binary terms. It's not shades of gray for him. He's got a vision of what the very best diet is going to be year-round to make him play football at his best.
Okay.
And he's going to cling to it and adhere to it, and he's not going to waver. And very few people are that committed.
Yadier Molina with a grand slam to beat the Royals and help the Mariners.
2 outs, the pitch for Yadi. Here it comes. Swing and a home run. Get up, baby. Get up. Get up. Get up. Oh, a grand slam home run for Yadier Molina. He touches them all, and the Redbirds are back on top.
Red Sox helped the Mariners yesterday.
Here's the pitch, and he swings and grounds it to deep third. Backhanded by Nunez, fires across, low, picked nicely by Moreland. Ball game over. The Red Sox win their 8th in a row. The Red Sox roll over the Rays 8-2.
USC head coach Clay Helton on his star quarterback Sam Darnold.
The ceiling's still so high for you. We're not a finished product. There's so much more we can learn, and he's accepted that, which is really neat. I mean, he's accepted the coaching. He accepts the fact that he's got so much growth as a quarterback left to go.
Dirtbag Jim Mora on his quarterback Josh Rosen's comments.
Young man that does have opinions, and oftentimes those opinions are conveyed to others because he is trying to bring attention to some that are maybe less fortunate or have less than he does, that at times maybe he feels are taken advantage of.
You got to be a little bit of a dirtbag.
Charles Barkley, this is the comments that Josh Rosen made the other day about going to school and being an athlete at the same time is virtually impossible. Here's Charles Barkley.
I don't want any rich white kid who's going to be 1, 2, or 3 in the draft telling these young black kids, no, just come here and play football. And then after 4 years, they ain't got no education, and they ain't never going to step foot in the NFL. I hate that message.
Good point. All right, Charles. I wonder how Josh Rosen feels about pissing Charles Barkley off. Floyd Mayweather says, you know what? I may not win in August.
What does that mean? I'm not the same. I'm not the same fighter I was 5 years ago. I lost a step. A fighter like Andre Berto don't even supposed to go the distance with Floyd Mayweather.
And a cat gets loose in the Cardinals-Royals game.
Remember the grounds crew coming out there to hopefully pick up the cat. Remember that incident in Seattle where the guy got the cat and then it bit him or scratched him, and
that may happen here too.
There it is.
Ow! Ow! Stop it!
Oh, yeah. He doesn't like that. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Okay. Thanks for that, Slickhawk.
Yeah.
21 minutes away.
Twice.
21 minutes away from the Seahawks at 7. In the very same segment, Steve Phillips will come on and talk about the Mariners' pursuit of the wild card. Shaq Griffin today, his first appearance on the morning show. Dear show, ... Hughes got something to say, and we've got a poll question that's going to make you ponder and give you a chance to win 50-yard line seats to see the Seahawks and Cardinals. What do we do if the two backup quarterbacks really struggle in the first couple of preseason games? Do you, A, stay the course with those two guys, Boykin and Davis? B, bring in Colin Kaepernick? C, bring in Robert Griffin III? Or D, bring in another veteran quarterback unnamed on 950 KJR? It's about 15 feet down the hill at 13. Johnson for birdie. Moving right to left, he played way too much break. And now he's got 5 feet for par. All right.
Nice job, Vern.
Oh, yeah. Anyway.
Should have taken Matsuyama.
Look at you, already second-guessing me.
I've been second-guessing it since the second we did it.
Well, you agreed with it.
I liked it. I went with it.
I mean, if you had fought me a little bit, I could have been persuaded. I had Matsuyama last week in the golf pool. I could have been.
I generally defer to you because you know golf far better than I do.
It's really a percentages thing as much as anything else. I mean, it's the world's #1 player without anybody else taking him. Right. That's all. That was my only thinking. I'm not. And they've played 2 holes. 3 holes.
No, it's over.
So let's not get all excited. All right.
Matsuyama wins.
Matsuyama wins. Okay. He's the leader. Let's put it that way at the PGA Championship. All right. So today's is a crowded day on the show. We've got the Seahawks at 7 here in about 14 minutes. We'll go over all the Seahawks news and notes. Steve Phillips will be with us in the same first segment of the 7 o'clock hour to talk about the Mariners' surge to the wild card. Shaq Griffin, 7:30. Deer Show, 7:45. Hugh's got something to say at 8 o'clock. A chance to win 50-yard line seats to see the Seahawks and Cardinals at 8:30. Pete Carroll at 8:45. Great debate at 9 o'clock. And the 12th Man Roundtable at 9:30. So we do these poll questions every day. We bring them up for conversation. We get opinions from Hugh Breedlove Millen here at the VMAC and Slickhawk back in the studio. We take texts, we take phone calls, and then anybody who participates at 8:28 gets an opportunity to win 50-yard line seats to the final game of the regular season, the Cardinals and Seahawks game, just by giving an opinion. And so today's question in the shower was, we've watched Boykin and Davis, the two backup quarterbacks, really struggle so far in training camp. It's very conceivable that when we turn the game on Sunday night and they play most of the game, if not just about all the game, they could struggle again. And my poll question is today, if they really struggle over the next two games, if you were the general manager, if you were Pete Carroll, if you were John Schneider, would you A, stay the course with those two guys, B, bring in the controversial Colin Kaepernick, C, Robert Griffin III's out there, he might be able to fit in this offense, or D, bring another quarterback in, or quarterbacks that were not named Robert Griffin or Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah.
Hugh Breedlove Millen, you think, we've talked a little bit about this off the air, you think this is a very complicated question. This is not as simple as just a football-related decision.
Well,
right?
I think reflexively, I just say Colin Kaepernick is the best out there. If we're talking about Boykin and Davis really crapping down their leg,
right,
and
playing in the preseason games the way they look out here during training camp.
Right. And so, the obvious would be Kaepernick based on what he's accomplished, the fact that he has stylistically something similar to Russell Wilson's game. I think that there is a consideration. If you're making these decisions, you have to consider everything, and everything that's substantive. And one of the things, Russell Wilson unquestionably is a top handful, half a dozen quarterback in this league. He's a franchise quarterback. He's done nothing but win and excel. But if you're making these decisions, you have to take double and triple bogey out of play, and you're considering all dynamics. If you sign Colin Kaepernick, Kaepernick is an interesting personality. Now, we've had discussions about how Russell Wilson is, I took the YouTube appearance of him in a San Diego church. I watched it 51 minutes, and then I made my kids sit down and watch it. He is that type of guy. I get misty thinking about the type of leadership that he has. Having said that, there's a certain lack of street credibility that Russell Wilson, he has an enormous respect, but there's a street credibility that exists in locker rooms that Russell Wilson...
One of the guys.
One of the guys.
You're saying that Russell Wilson is not one of the
guys. Not
as
much. And I think if Kaepernick comes in, you've already had Michael Bennett, Doug Baldwin, Richard Sherman. These, multiple guys have gone on record that they are ardently and they are taking action to support Kaepernick. If the Seahawks, we just envision them going 11-5 and 12-4, but if you have a little skid and Russell Wilson is not playing well, and there's already been intimations, hey, you got to have competition at all positions. How come there's not competition for Russell Wilson? If Kaepernick comes in here and captivates that locker room and has that streak
and is one of the guys hanging out with the guys off the field, hanging out in bars or in restaurants, being more one of the guys than Russell Wilson, when the bumps start happening, you're worried about the locker room pushing for Colin. Why is Colin Kaepernick not getting a chance? And that could be an overall problem and a reason not to bring Colin Kaepernick. It would be a
consideration. I think it could be a substantive consideration.
Slickhawk, what do you think about that?
I don't even know if it's so much about hanging out in restaurants and things like that. You remember after the Super Bowl loss, there was a narrative circling around kind of, is Russell Wilson quote unquote black enough? And a lot of people ask, well, what does that even mean? And kind of they kind of shied away from that commentary. And I think that that's kind of a larger kind of blanket statement around a different issue, which is Russell Wilson is a quarterback Okay, but Russell Wilson is also black. He's a black quarterback, and the way that you are in a locker room and the way you are around your teammates is different, I think, generally for a quarterback than it is for the rest of the players. And what I'm talking about is
he's a front office guy.
Right. Look at Tom Brady. He is a quarterback the way Tom Brady is a quarterback and wants to be. The way Tom Brady is, tight with John Schneider, tight with Pete Carroll, which is fine in most situations because, look around the league, most starting quarterbacks, franchise quarterbacks, aren't black. And so it's a different dynamic in that locker room. And, I don't want to go as far to say an Uncle Tom feel, but I can certainly see where that would come from, where he's, Russell Wilson's tighter with John Schneider than he is with us. And he's not one of us. He's one of them. I could definitely see how that could be taking place. And you have Colin Kaepernick come in, and I would think that Colin Kaepernick would just kind of slide in there and just be one of the guys, just like Hugh says.
Okay, and that's a problem. That's potentially a problem in times
not
of
a
trouble.
problem if you're winning and Russ is playing well. But as I said, you're looking at how do I take triple bogey out of play? Why do we use that idiom? Because you're sitting there saying, what's the worst thing that could happen? I'm going to shoot away from the river.
Right.
Because that's the worst thing that could happen here. I'm probably not going to hit it in the river, but I got to take it into account.
Let me understand this, and we only have 30.
Russell Wilson already nearly lost this locker room. After that whole Super Bowl thing with Marshawn Lynch and a lot of the locker room thinking that the front office wanted Russell Wilson to have the MVP and not Marshawn Lynch, that was a real feeling in that locker room. There were players that felt that way. And Russell has gone through a lot to try and get that locker room back.
Okay, so does that mean so you'd like to have Colin Kaepernick in the case that Russell Wilson gets hurt and can't play, come in there, he'd be your best alternative, but you're worried about if Russell Wilson doesn't play particularly well and they go on a little bumpy patch, whether the locker room would push for Colin Kaepernick to get a chance, and then therefore we could have kind of a little bit mini revolt on our hands. That's what you're telling me?
It'd be consideration.
Okay.
There's certain personality. Cam Newton has a different, he seemingly has a different personality that way. And so it would be a consideration because Kaepernick has been so bold and apparently in some circles so dynamic that this could transcend sports. And so look, would it ultimately prevent me from making the decision? No, but it would be a consideration.
6:54 on 950 KJR. Interesting conversation anyway about the poll question today. What would you do if the two backups struggle over the first couple of preseason games? The Seahawks at 7. Greg Bell will have an opinion on that from the Tacoma News Tribune, a Seahawks insider, and all the news, all the notes from yesterday's practice and everything that's going on today here at the VMAC. Next. Okay, Seahawks at 7. Greg Bell waiting. He'll be with us. So will Steve Phillips. Greg Bell and Steve Phillips all in this very segment. Greg Bell on all the news and notes from training camp day number, I think it was 9 yesterday. Maybe it was 10. And our discussion, our conversation about some of the complicated elements, clubhouse elements to the decision on Colin Kaepernick here in Seattle. So we'll skip through some of the notes to the Seahawks and come back to it on the Seahawks at 7. Mariners did it again, offense plus bullpen. You want to call it the smoke and mirrors
Absolutely.
Of the Seattle Mariners? It's offense and bullpen. Mariners win, take sole possession of wild card number 2. 2.5 games back of the Yankees for wild card number 1. Nelson Cruz has just been a delight since the moment he stepped onto the field for the Mariners and put a Mariners uniform on for the first time. He's been a delight on the field. He's been a delight off the field. He has been one of my all-time favorite Mariner players, despite the fact that he swiped my movie, my chair, my seat, my reserve seat in the Factoria movie theaters, right under my nose. He sat with my family, and I wasn't allowed to.
Did they at least talk with him?
No. Indians acquire Jay Bruce from the Mets. Michael Porter's younger brother, Jante, reclassifies, will be a freshman this season at Mizzou. The PGA Championship's underway in Charlotte. Early action. Hideki Matsuyama, last week's champion at the World Golf Championships in Akron, is your early leader. He's playing the back 9 first. at Quail Hollow. All right, Seahawks at 7. Let's go. 7:02
Very
on
happy with how
950.
things have turned out through the offseason and getting our guys together.
Live from the VMAX.
Wilson going to run. Diving for the end zone. He's in.
This is the Seahawks at 7 with Mitch in the morning.
Touchdown, Seahawks.
And we are 8 minutes or so away, maybe 9 or 10, from Steve Phillips, former general manager of the New York Mets, who's our weekly baseball guest, to talk about the Mariners and how legit this run is. But first, here's Greg Bell. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Mitch. It's pretty nice of you to have me on before the esteemed Steve Phillips. I don't know if I can carry his weight, but I'll try.
Well, you do your best opening act imitation, would you please? Warm up the crowd, lather us up, and then Steve will come out and finish us off. What are the news and notes from yesterday's practice? Share a couple of observations and tidbits from yesterday, Greg.
Well, something that's a little bit it wasn't exactly obvious to people just watching casually is that Tyler Lockett's completely back, fully back. I saw him make a move on Nico Thorpe yesterday in a 11-on-11 drill. He got off the line quickly. He leaned into Thorpe as if he was doing an in route. Then he faded to the outside. I think you might even watch him with Hugh at the same time right in front of us on that side field, and he caught a pass from Russell Wilson for a touchdown. And the separation, the craftiness and guile of just the technique that he has in his craft, he's all the way back running-wise. That's nothing but great things for this offense, who didn't have him for the most important games last year after he broke his leg. He's going to be there September 10th in Green Bay, and it looks like he's going to be everything he was before the broken leg. We'll see.
That's great.
It is. It's a huge move. Another day, another set of offensive linemen. Jordan Roos, the undrafted free agent from Purdue, got a chance at left guard with the first team for the first time. And they put Ethan Posick in team drills at center for the first time. It's been Joey Hunt behind Justin Britt the whole camp. But yesterday, Posick, who was the center at LSU, of course, second-round pick, got center time with Austin Davis in the third-team offense. Pete Carroll saying afterwards, yeah, that's the first time we got a chance to see him in scrimmaging. We want to see all that he can do and how important he is. But they keep talking about all the things he can do at multiple positions, and it's making me think they really do think he's more valuable as a reserve in 3 places than a starter in 1. But Carroll also went out of his way to say that Posick is still competing with Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle. Ifedi came back for the first time since getting decked on Thursday by Frank Clark, and he went right into the starting right tackle role he had before the punch. Frank Clark came back, had just a little bit of position work. He was still wearing a bulky knee brace that he was fiddling with and having trouble fitting correctly. And then he didn't do anything during team drills but jog on the side. So he's not fully back yet.
I heard the words coach's discretion with Frank Clark. Is that coach's discretion because of the fight, or is that coach's discretion because he's hobbled and they don't want to risk any further injury to a knee problem?
No, Carroll made it clear that it was because of the fight, and that he said that the knee injury had very little to do with all of this, was what Carroll said.
So this is a long-running consequence from, it sounds to me like, he didn't play, he didn't practice for 2, 3, 4 days. Now he's being limited because of coach's discretion. Are we to read into this that they are really fired up and pissed over what happened in the punch?
They are, and I've been told by people inside the building that he is still deeply in the doghouse for what happened.
Really?
But the limited part yesterday was because of the knee. The not practicing for 5 days was because of the suspension, the practice suspension. Even no one's calling it that. That's what it was. And as we've talked about with Hugh, I'm pretty certain he got a big chunk of money taken from him. Now, NFL players don't really respond until you start taking game checks because they only get paid in 17ths during the season, as everyone knows. And that's when the real attention is grabbed, is when you take game check money away from guys and suspend them for games. No indication that has happened here, but yeah, I've been told in very certain terms that Frank Clark is still in the Seahawks doghouse for what happened on that bunch.
A couple of other things that I'd like to ask you about before you go. Seahawks at 7, Seahawks Insider from the Tacoma News Tribune. Follow him on Twitter. Read his stuff online. Read his stuff in the paper. Greg Bell, nice enough to be with us each and every morning at this precise time talking about the news and notes from the Seahawks training camp. Let me get you to a couple of more places, and then I'll let you go. Shaq Griffin's interception of Russell Wilson and taken to the house for a touchdown yesterday. That's music to a lot of our ears who are not concerned with Russell, but very concerned with that opposite corner spot to Richard Sherman, Greg?
His hands, Mitch, he's got the speed, he's got the size, but even his hands, his ability to grab the ball, to turn quickly and find the ball out of a break, that pass was behind Jermaine Kearse that Wilson threw. It wasn't a great pass, but still Griffin turned around and sort of ripped the ball away from Kearse to make sure it never got to him on the outside left there. Jeremy Lane's not making that play. Let's put it that way. And I've become convinced, like Hugh was talking yesterday, that Jeremy Lane is their inside guy, Shaq Griffin is their outside guy, and Lane missed his fifth practice again yesterday. Shaq Griffin's been all that and a bag of chips this camp. We'll see. He hasn't had to tackle an NFL player in a game yet. He hasn't had to defend guys off the line yet. We haven't ever seen him bring a guy to the ground yet. But as far as skills and intellect and knowledge of the game, he's everything that they expected and more. I expect him to start on Sunday night against the Chargers.
Beautiful.
In the preseason game.
Beautiful. Two other things for Greg Bell. Jermaine Kearse, you mentioned him in his role or lack thereof in the interception for Shaq Griffin on Russell Wilson. Kearse had a pretty good day yesterday, at least in my mind. I didn't stay for the entire practice, but for the portion that I did, he made a nice play down the left sideline. He made some plays yesterday in the passing game, Jermaine Kearse.
He did, and in the scrimmage on Monday, the mock game, the touchdown Russell Wilson threw was a bad pass over the middle that Kearse leaped and twisted behind him and caught a twisting catch. Pete Carroll said again yesterday after practice, look, Wilson and Kearse have great chemistry, and we've talked about this, Mitch, that above everything else is the reason why he's going to be on the roster this year. Wilson trusts him. And it is some of the most important throws in this franchise's history have been to Jermaine Kearse, whether fans like it or not, and Super Bowls and NFC title games in the overtime to beat Green Bay. And he audibled to Kearse after Kearse had dropped a few passes that day with the Super Bowl on the line. He threw to him and got him there. So he's not going anywhere, and it's the trust they had since 2012. He may not be the number 2 receiver. Tyler Lockett had that role at the end of last season before he broke his leg. But the Seahawks use 3, 4, 5 wide receivers quite a bit anymore. So he'll be a prominent role in the offense as he has been.
And finally, how about an educated guess, since it's Thursday morning? I know that nothing's official. How about an educated Greg Bell guess on who won't play for precautionary reasons on Sunday, injury reasons on Sunday, Greg?
Well, Jeremy Lane, it looks that way. He won't play because, as I said, he's been off the field for 5 days.
Right.
I'm not positive Luke Joker will play, or if he does, maybe less than the other starters on the offensive line, because they're still, as Tom Cable said, putting him on a pitch count since that knee surgery in October. Eddie Lacy, a lot of people made a big fact yesterday that Lacy was running exclusively with the second team and Thomas Rawls with the first. I'm not sure that is indicative of where they're going to be in the regular season, or if it's just getting guys consistent carries for an entire series, which they can't do if they're splitting time on one team or the other. But I'm not sure how much Lacy's going to play this first game coming off the ankle. Frank Clark doesn't look like he's going to play, or if he does, it would be very spotty because of his absence for the last 5 days and now this knee thing. So, and again, Mitch, even the ones who are healthy to play, maybe a series or 2 at most in that first exhibition game. That's how Carroll's done it so far anyway.
All right, let's get an opinion from you before you go. You may or may not heard the early sections of the show. We bring up a poll question from training camp that we ask the listeners to answer, and we've already gotten into this. It's kind of complicated sometimes. Some people are going to make it a little bit more complicated. Others are going to look at it strictly from a football decision. I've asked the question, if Austin Davis and Boykin continue to struggle in games, preseason games like they have in training camp, should, and in your case would, the Seahawks entertain the Colin Kaepernick idea all over again to fortify their backup quarterback plans? Should and would.
I'll answer both parts. One, they should. 2, they won't. And their ship has sailed on that, and I really believe it's to keep Russell Wilson from having that distraction, competition, sideshow, the fact that the backup quarterback would be having press conferences, or at least media would want to talk to him as much or more than the starter. The Seahawks don't want to do that, and I really think that's ultimately why they didn't sign him. It looked good to bring him in. It looked like they were a progressive, open-minded team. Not to mention the fact that not half, but a lot of the stars on that team, mostly on defense, have been public in saying they support Kaepernick and think he's a great player and deserves a chance on this team, and why some of the Seahawks think he should be on this team. So that's all something they don't want. And they don't want their $88 million quarterback looking over his shoulder, wondering why so much attention is going to a Super Bowl starter as backup.
You think that they should ignore all that stuff and bring in a better quarterback to be their backup quarterback?
Well, either you're all in competition or you're not, and it's always compete. And in this team right now, it's always compete except the quarterback, because that is the least competitive position on the team. Now, I get it. The franchise guy is clearly above everybody else. You're paying him all that money, and he should be the best and by far. Mm-hmm. But we want to be competitive at every position falls flat when you have two guys that can't hit the side of a barn so far in training camp as your backups, and you have a Super Bowl starter who is sitting out unemployed, who you brought in when nobody else was even sniffing him. Could have had him. They probably cost way more than they would want to pay for a backup quarterback. And let's face it, Mitch, the Seahawks, by plan, don't want any backup quarterback to play any snaps. And before last year, nobody had ever played a snap when Russell Wilson was this team's starter. So all of this in the Seahawks' mind is a moot point. It will be unmoot if that offensive line doesn't protect Russell Wilson better than it did last year.
Got it. Greg Bell, Tacoma News Tribune, with always good stuff at the Seahawks at 7 on 950 KJR. We'll see you out here at 9:30. Thank you, Greg.
Yes,
appreciate it
Thank
very
you,
much.
Mitch.
All right, there he is. Each and every morning, you can count on us at 7 o'clock. We're going to have Greg Bell on, Tacoma News Tribune, Seahawks insider, on all of the nitty-gritty, all of the details, all of the storylines, all the things that they're talking about here at Seahawks training camp and throughout the season. All right? 7:14 on 950 KJR. Let's change gears to a very exciting Seattle sports story. Here we go.
It's time for our weekly conversation with former GM and MLB Network Steve Phillips.
Brought to you by the Puget Sound Audi dealers. Before you make any new car decision, be sure to think Audi and the area's most popular SUV, the Audi Q5.
Now, here's Mitch in the morning.
Let's say good morning to our good friend Steve Phillips, who joins us here as we are at the VMAC to talk a little baseball. And have you checked? Have you looked at your handy-dandy standings page, Steve Phillips, in the American League? Look what we have here. Look who the wild card team number 2 is in the American League, Steve Phillips.
I tell you what, it's a pretty amazing thing, no question about that, Mitch. Good to be with you. Look, they're playing good baseball. They're playing gutty baseball. They're dealing with a road trip and really a month where they're effectively on the road for 20 of the 27 games they play. And Scott Service said after the game how proud he is of the effort and that they're attacking this thing. And that's the way they're playing. Plus, doesn't hurt. Nelson Cruz is red hot right now. He is absolutely on fire, carrying the offense, and they're getting the job done, and they're a really fun team to watch right now.
The problem is they've got no starting pitching, and it's just unbelievable. We talk about the expression smoke and mirrors. I guess the smoke is the offense, and the mirrors is the bullpen, and somehow, some way, they haven't had a quality start. Let's put it this way. From somebody not named James Paxton, I can't remember the last time I watched the game and thought, boy, now that was a good, solid start from one of the starting pitchers. How are they going to be able to put all this together with this starting staff at this point with all the injuries, Steve?
Well, you know what's interesting is that the questions that you asked me like that about the Seattle Mariners, that if I went on a show and was asked this, having the same sort of a breakdown in Kansas City, they'd be saying to me, what do we do? How do we win with the kind of starting pitching that we have right now? In Tampa Bay, they'd be saying, how are we going to win with the defense that we have out there right now, where we gave up 8 runs, and Tampa Bay did yesterday, gave up 8 runs to the Red Sox, and the Red Sox had only 3 RBIs, which means they wild pitched them in, they pass balled them in, they threw it away a little bit, and the errors led to the runs coming in. In Minnesota, they'd be saying, well, how are we going to do it with the starting pitching that we have right now and all the youthful guys in the bullpen? The Angels are – so here's how you do it. You're built similarly to everybody else. You just need to get the most out of what you have and manage it, and Service is going to have to push the right buttons. And, oh, by the way, scoring early and often really benefits the pitching staff. So the offensive production is critical, and it doesn't hurt right now that Edwin Diaz is locked in. I mean, it's not, and again, I give the staff there a lot of credit. When your closer implodes and you've got to kind of rebuild it, and then, you put him back in, he looks like he's going to be okay, then he implodes again. To be able to put that guy back together again and then, get an 18-plus inning scoreless streak going, they've done a really nice job with him. So here's the thing. Everybody's the same. They're all flawed teams right now. So why not the Seattle Mariners?
Yeah, I suppose you can look at it that way. The flaws for the Mariners seem to be uglier to me, well, maybe because I'm closer to it. But you know what Jerry DiPoto said on our station in the last few days? He said he's just trying to get to September because it almost sounds like when they get to September, they're not going to be afraid to play a lot of games like Madden would manage in Chicago, like go to the bullpen early and just make these things bullpen games. And when you have expanded rosters and you got more guys, just, 2 or 3 innings, maybe 4 innings from starters, and then stitch it together with a bullpen. How are you? Can you get through a month like that and get into the playoffs like that, Steve?
Well, you can. I mean, it's going to certainly impact pace of play. I mean, Rob Manfred, the commissioner, is not going to be all that happy about it. But you have to manage the situations. You get the expanded rosters, and whenever I expanded the rosters and I was in a playoff race, I said to myself, okay, what am I going to do if I need to bring out my right-handed starter in the 5th inning? Who's that first lefty that I'm bringing in? Then I'm going to need that lefty situational guy in the 7th inning. Then I may need a lefty in the 8th inning, and you're going to ham and egg the innings. You're going to work your way through it, work the matchups. Yep. If you don't have the talent to out-pitch the hitters on the other team, then you have to out-situation them, and then you have to have a little luck with the timing of the performance as well. But, yes, you can do it, and it makes it a lot easier to do it when that's what everybody else is doing as well.
We're with Steve Phillips on 950 KJR. Shaq Griffin's going to be sitting down in the chair with us in about 9 minutes from now. So in our remaining moments, you heard about the Alonso trade like we did a few days ago, that an all-star, 22 home runs, although probably an all-star because you have to have each team represented, but still having a good year, a 30-year-old that's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. What'd you think of that deal for the Mariners, Steve?
I liked it. I was surprised it didn't happen earlier, but I like the deal. I think that he's an offensive threat. Now, he's made some adjustments. I mean, here's a guy that has put up 20-plus home runs, 22 home runs. The most he's ever hit before in a season is 9. So he made some of those adjustments with his swing that we've heard so much about, the different launch angle, right, to be able to get some lift in his swings to create backspin on the baseball. He's made some of those adjustments, and he's a different hitter this year than he's been in the past. Now, the one challenge has been, post-All-Star break, he's an All-Star because he had 20 home runs at the break. I mean, he earned it not just as a member of the A's being represented, but since then he's hitting .230. He's got a .733 OPS. He's down almost 200 points after the break. So they have to hope that maybe he's gotten in a little rut and he can work his way out. Maybe he gets hot at exactly the same time that Nelson Cruz cools off a little bit. But he adds some length and some balance and some depth to the lineup, and not a bad defender either. So I do like this move for the Mariners.
All right, 20 seconds, Steve. A couple weeks ago I asked you who's going to be the wild card teams, and you said sheepishly you didn't think the Mariners would be one of them. Are you willing to consider reassessing, or is it too early for me to ask you to reassess?
Well, I'll reassess, but I mean, look, right now, any pick I make, I've got a chance to be wrong a second time, and then next week you ask me a chance, because everybody's the same. So it's going to come down to who's hot at the end of the season to separate from everybody else. Okay. So my answer to you is, why not the Seattle Mariners?
Okay. Love it, Steve. Thanks very, very much. Appreciate it.
You bet. Always good. Thanks.
Okay. Steve Phillips with us each and every week at this time. He's reassessing, but, it's going to be difficult. You got a bunch of teams here that are so mediocre and racing for that second wild, that one-game playoff, probably to go on the road to New York to face the Yankees or to Boston to face the Reds. Probably the Yankees in a one-game wild card playoff. Steve Phillips and Greg Bell with the Seahawks at 7 in our 7 o'clock segment on 950 KJR. I am really excited. The guy who picked off Russell Wilson yesterday and raced all the way down the field for a pick six. The brand new corner of the Seattle Seahawks, Shaq Griffin, sits down with us next on 950 KJR. Oh, no, wait.
In your face, you get sprung. Wanna pull up tough, cause you notice that butt was stuffed. Deep in the jeans she's wearing.
We're about to hear from Shaq Griffin here at the VMAC, the Virginia Mason Athletic Center. Shaq Griffin's going to be our guest. First time ever on the morning show for Shaq Griffin, who is rapidly becoming the apple of my eye, and I haven't even seen him play yet. I've seen him play in practice. Hubie, while we wait for Shaq Griffin to come out, my question is, and maybe there's just a simple, hey, he went to Central Florida and he wasn't coached very, I've heard you say he wasn't coached very well. I'm sure you won't say that to him, and why should you? But, you know, you tell me body profiling that he's got a great-looking body.
Yeah.
You tell me that he's got real athleticism. He can really move for a big guy. You tell me all these things that I love to hear about Shaq Griffin, and then you tell me that there were 10 or 12 other guys that were corners in the draft that were thought of higher than Shaq Griffin. He was kind of a forgotten man amongst corners in the NFL draft. Do you have a sense why that is? I mean, what was it about him that people didn't like?
In watching tape, as I had mentioned to you after the draft, he was quick to give up the inside route. He saw a lot of slant routes. He was beaten on a slant route. He's beaten on skinny posts, on in-breaking routes. And, in fact, Richard Sherman the other day mentioned that about his –
He was beaten, or he just decided because of some sort of a philosophy at Central Florida that we're going to give up that. What was it, a physical deficiency?
No, it was
or
just,
this is just the way they did things?
Yeah, it was just a posturing. They did often a technique called press bail, where you're at the line of scrimmage and then you turn knees in and you're trying to identify the route structure, and it would be easy to give up the inside route. But even when he was in press, he didn't understand the concept of preventing that inside release. You know, that use the sideline as your friend, funnel to the outside. And then the other thing I saw was he was a little bit, I don't want to say slow, but his eyes were slow in terms of route recognition. Concepts would kind of freeze him. You know, meaning if he had the outside receiver and he's trying to play zone coverage and he's trying to process both what is the outside guy doing and what is the slot receiver doing,
right?
And where does he need to be? Sometimes he would just kind of momentarily freeze and what have you. And so when I say I thought he was poorly coached, it's not understanding the urgency to prevent the inside release, and then processing concepts. He got beat a few times for touchdowns. I don't know. I think that there were some things to not like about him on tape.
Yeah.
But the way Seattle scouts a guy, they look and they say, hey, if we teach him our relatively patient brand of press coverage, meaning you're not trying to jack a guy at the line of scrimmage and take the big swing at the line of scrimmage, because if you miss, you're vulnerable to a fade, and
you're
they're
responsible for the fade.
They're kicking a PAT in 10 seconds.
Right.
So there's a certain technique that these guys allow where they're maybe gonna have contact, but it's based on the release of the receiver and the angle the receiver takes.
Yeah.
And so, you just felt to say, okay, does he have the skill set? Does he have the physicality? Can he turn and run? Any corner's gonna have to, turn and run, and can he accelerate? And so his ability to turn and his change of direction, his acceleration, his top end speed, his size, some of those things, the tools you're working with are really top shelf.
And that's why as I listen to you, I still wonder why it sounds to me the way you explain it, that an NFL scouting guy, an NFL personnel guy should be able to look at a lot of those things and say, some of those things, okay, are questionable physical deficiencies or whatever deficiencies on behalf of the player, but a lot of those things are very easily taught out of him, and he should have been much more highly regarded. I would think he should have been much more, with the way you describe the deficiencies, that he would be more highly regarded than he was.
You know who missed on Richard Sherman? You know who missed on Richard Sherman? Everybody. including the Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
They missed on Richard Sherman.
Yeah, but that doesn't tell me anything.
Why?
There's been just because. I mean,
you know who missed on Cam Chancellor?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Including the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, but everybody's a little different.
I need to clarify why I say that. They're both fifth-round picks.
Yeah.
If they knew how good they were going to be, Seattle wouldn't have waited to the fifth round to get them.
Yeah, but I would suggest to you that those guys didn't have the physical tools that you're talking about, this top-end speed and the maybe the body profiling. There were more question marks about the toolbox of those two guys than the guy that we're about to talk to. Are you not tracking me? I mean, obviously there's going to be fifth-round draft choices that end up being Pro Bowlers and All Pros and Hall of Famers. Guys. Yeah, but I accept that and I understand that. As we're joined for the first time by the apple of our eye. You don't realize how popular you are. You got no idea. Shaq Griffin is here. Good morning, Shaq. Thank you for being with us. Tell us, how's it feel? You picking up? You know, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to go out there and pick off number 3. Didn't you get the rule book when you came to town? Didn't they hand you the rule book? It says no picking off number 3 and taking it for a pick 6. You're not supposed to do that.
Well, the only thing they told me when to get here was to compete. And, going through OTAs and all the, little mini camps, we couldn't do that. Was following by the rules and making sure we're taking care of our teammates. Now we're into camp, and they said they want to see what I was about. And, the one thing I do, I love to compete. I love this game, and that's something, I come out here to do. And that's something I have to do to keep competing.
Well, keep doing it. It was entertaining to all of us.
Pick off the other team's guy, not our guy.
In a game, are you housing that, or does Russell get your knee on the ground? What do you think?
Oh, no, in the game, I'm definitely, I'm going full speed. And, I'm going to cover ground really quickly, and I'm going to get in the end zone.
All right.
He's got the angle on him, though, doesn't he? I mean, you were there yesterday when you saw. Who had the angle?
I think there's a fair debate. There's a fair debate as to how that would have played out, but I don't know if you had a little shimmy shake at some point. I think he could have put that in the house, right?
He said shimmy shake. He's saying that he's not going to need a shimmy shake.
You're just going to outrun him.
I got to get you guys on the same page here.
Russ had a little angle. It was a little bit of there was a little bit of physical confrontation. What I told Mitch earlier was that wasn't just a clean play. I mean, you had to battle for that ball, and ultimately, it's a nice play if it's an incomplete and you knock that down. But it could potentially a game changer if you find a way to snatch that thing like you did and return it.
Oh yeah, and definitely. And the way I caught that in practice, my main focus was to make sure I didn't make contact, with Jermaine Kearse. At the end of the day, I'm taking care of my teammates, so my main goal is to stay out the way. So that's the reason why I had to spin the way I did. And, I'm just trying to make sure I take care of everybody. I'm not trying to run into nobody, We need everybody. So
we need them all?
Yeah, definitely. So my main thing was if I could get the ball, I would. But my main focus was to stay out the way and make sure I run into nobody.
The voice of Shaq Griffin, who are so thrilled to have. You're going to get a chance to see him on TV for the first time on Sunday. He's going to make his NFL debut, preseason NFL debut, and we've got him right here in front of us here on KJR. We're so close to all of this stuff. You're a Florida guy. You're from a million miles. I'm from Florida. I know how far Florida is. It's about as far as you can go. You're a million miles away, and we're sitting here watching Deshaun Shedd get hurt. We're worrying about who's going to be the corner, who's going to step into that spot. This is last year, and you're just playing college. Did you know how much did you follow? Did you follow the NFL? I don't know who your team was. If I had said to you what's going on in Seattle with their corners, you would know Richard Sherman, of course, but you may not be aware. Did you know what you were getting yourself into, that you were coming here and all the Seahawks fans are like, we need a guy to step into that corner. Did you know all of this, or did you not know all of this?
Well, I wasn't sure about everything until I, made my first visit here, and after the draft day, they told me how good of a situation I was in. After that, I took it all in. At first, I didn't know. Of course, I knew, Richard Sherman is some people who I follow. I ain't have a specific team, but I had specific players. So just to be here and to be in this great opportunity is perfect. I continued to understand that as I got closer to this, the program after I got drafted. I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Who are the players?
The Players was, I follow Ray Lewis, I follow Richard Sherman. I followed the whole Baltimore crew. They all came from Miami, and I was a huge Miami fan growing up.
Okay.
So I followed that whole crew growing up.
You mentioned your early days in Florida. You have a remarkable story, at least as I think I understand it, and maybe you can share it. You have a twin brother. He had an unfortunate situation at birth where some problems there. You were recruited to play for the Miami Hurricanes and a lot of other big-time programs, but reportedly you insisted, hey, if you're not giving my brother a scholarship, despite the fact he doesn't have a hand due to a problem in the womb, then I'm not coming. You're not recruiting me either. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell us that story and how you were convicted to make that stand for your brother.
Well, we had a bond that, was unbreakable. It was definitely unbreakable, and then we created this package deal coming soon we got to high school. We didn't know how the offer was going to be set up, but we knew for a fact we was going to stay with each other no matter what. We're definitely that close. And once the offer started pulling in, and like I said, Miami was my favorite school, but at the end of the day, they wasn't offering my brother, and my main goal was to stay with him and stick around with him. So, after that whole process started, we had a couple of schools who was offering both of us, but we also wanted to stay closer to home. And I had some bigger offers, but they wasn't offering him. So, that made it clear that if you're not offering my brother, there's no reason to offer me. So I took a visit to UCF, and I met with George O'Leary. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was, well, I'm not taking one without the other. So after that, I pretty much just fell in love with it. And, that's the reason why we ended up at UCF.
Was there any other reactions with the coaches when you said, like, Miami coaches or some of these other big schools, when you said, no, I got to have my brother? Any reactions that are memorable to you?
No big reactions. I had, statements like, sometimes it's time for you to grow up and depart from your brother. But, at that time, it wasn't about me growing up. It's about, us two sticking together, and see how everything plays out. I don't take back none of the decisions I made. I feel like everything happened for a reason, and I'm glad I made the choice that I did.
Now, part of the plan, all this is good and admirable, and we're falling in love with you. Part of the plan wasn't that he was going to outplay you last year. Okay, I don't remember that being. I don't remember that being part of the plan. And from what I hear, who was the defensive player of the year in the conference?
Yeah, my brother.
Was it you?
My brother definitely.
Was it you? No, it wasn't you. He's not supposed to outplay you. You're supposed to say to your brother, "What are you doing here? I vouch for you. I get you. I help you get into Scott. You're not supposed to come in and make me look bad."
He definitely deserved that. The first couple of years when he wasn't playing, when you can sit out for 3 years is tough, and for him to have his debut like that, that's awesome. I was so proud of him. And, that's something you deserve. It's tough going through 3 years not playing football. The game that you love is tough.
Yeah.
And, and he was so hard on, wanting to just give up and, thinking about maybe doing another sport. It's tough on him because you had, coaches who were telling him maybe this profession is not for you. It's tough to hear that, going through college. And, when Scott Frost came and they gave him a shot, he took full advantage. And you can tell, being Defensive Player of the Year, he nominated for almost 4 awards of being the best player in the, college football, best linebacker. Amazing. So I feel like he deserves everything that's coming for him. And, he's definitely humble. Right now he's actually staying at the facility for the whole camp.
Oh, good.
He's not even going home. He wanted to get the full experience. And, he really loves his game. And, I'm proud of him.
We're spending some time with Shaq Griffin. Shaq, when you got drafted, now I had played in the league. I played with Deion Sanders in Atlanta and what have you, and it was my job to study corners. And when I studied you there, one of the comments I made was you were a little too quick to give up the inside route, the slants, some in routes, skinny posts, and what have you, and that maybe that might have knocked you down in the eyes of some people in the NFL. I see you nodding your head. Maybe take us into that in terms of how that played out at UCF. Is that something you identified? Are the coaches talking to you about that? Just kind of talk about your game as to why you were a third-round pick and yet why you seem so gifted in so many important skills as a corner here.
Yeah, well, I know we play a little differently back at UCF. And, I feel like technique was my biggest thing back at UCF. I was so aggressive, and they gave receivers a chance to use that against me. I remember going on different, deep routes where I'd be trying to get extra going down the route, trying to push off and give an extra nudge, and that gave receivers enough chance to really use it against me and, get in front of me and then use it to advantage. And, now I'm just relying more on my technique and being more patient, and and not just relying on just athleticism. So, that's something I learned. That's why I feel like, coming to the league, it wasn't too crazy. It's just I had to just listen, and slow everything down and just start to learn the technique that I needed to, take me further.
Well, congratulations on all your success. We love having you here. We can't wait to see you on Sunday. We've been able to see you at practice, but a lot of the people that are listening are going to see number 26 for the first time on their TV screens on Sunday. I can't wait. I can't wait. Now stop picking off our quarterback and start picking off the other quarterback. All right, you got it? All right, Shaq. Thanks very much. Shaq Griffin, a really immensely likable young man, is now a corner for the Seahawks. Can't wait to see him against the Chargers on Sunday, and I'm sure he can't wait to play against the Chargers on Sunday. We'll get back to our poll question. Colin Kaepernick, if the two backups struggle, we want to hear from you at 49451 right now. Text us, Dear Show, 49451. If the two quarterbacks struggle in the first couple of preseason games, should, considering all that comes along with it, the Seahawks sign him to be their backup quarterback? Your answers next on 950 KJR.
Letters, oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day. Mailman, mailman, mail today. Reach right in and pull one out. Those letters, I love those letters. Let's find out what you got to say. Oh, boy. Mailman, mail.
Okay, we want to hear your opinions on anything. Dear Show, ... We've got the poll question running today. 50-yard line seats to see the Seahawks and the Cardinals in Game 16 of the regular season. We'll take your phone calls at 828 on this particular topic, the Colin Kaepernick topic. We have touched on it. We have talked about how it's maybe a little more complicated than just, hey, does Colin Kaepernick need to be your backup quarterback if the two other guys struggle? 49451, the Heritage Distilling text line. And by the way, Hugh's got something to say at 8 o'clock this morning in 11 minutes. We'll share the floor with Hugh. None of us know anything about the topic or anything that's on Hugh's mind. He will just share it with us in about 11 minutes from right now on 950 KJR. All right. Slickhawk, read some of these texts on the Colin. I've asked the question, if the two backup quarterbacks, Boykin and Davis, struggle in the first couple of preseason games, would you bring in Colin Kaepernick to be your backup? Would you bring in Robert Griffin III to be your backup? Would you stay the course with the two guys and hope it gets better? Or would you bring in somebody not named Griffin or Kaepernick? What do you think? Slickhawk, read some of the text, please.
A lot of responses, a lot of different opinions. Here's one. C, bring in Griffin III. He's basically Russell Jr.
Okay.
This one just says hell no. This one says yes, yes, yes to Cappy. Yes, get Cap. Enough with the Colin Kaepernick already. Leave this dead horse alone.
Why is it a dead horse? By virtue of the hypothetical, which is that the two guys don't play well, this is a Seahawks related issue, is it not? Do you not want to make sure your backup quarterback situation is as sound as possible in the event that Russell Wilson should be lost for a game or two here and there? I don't think it's a dead horse. I mean, maybe the Kaepernick part of the story is a dead horse, right. but the backup quarterback situation is clearly not a dead horse from what I've seen in training camp of these two guys. But go ahead, next few.
Dear Show, absolutely. Cap should be in camp right now. Miles better than the clowns we have as backup quarterbacks.
Okay.
Dear Show, the Seahawks should have brought Kaepernick in over the summer, and they should still do it now.
Are we convinced? And I asked this the other day, and I can ask this to you and Hugh right now at 52 minutes after the hour. Are we convinced that even if the Seahawks did bring Kaepernick in and say to him, we want you to be our backup, here's the veteran minimum salary, we want you to be our backup quarterback to Russell Wilson, are we all completely certain that Kaepernick would take that deal to be the Seahawks backup at the veteran minimum, or would he be more apt to say, I'm going to pass, thanks very, very much, I'm going to wait for a better opportunity when somebody gets hurt in the regular season or so forth? What is your guys' answer? Hugh, what's your answer to that question?
I'm not certain. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was intimations by Pete Carroll that when he came up, he says, "Hey, this guy's a starter." That could have been financially related in terms of that observation, so yeah, we don't know. We don't know what he's asking.
I believe he'd take the job. I don't know about the veteran minimum. I don't know if that's what they would offer. I mean, you had Ryan Fitzpatrick signed for $3 million. So I don't know if the veteran minimum is right. It depends on how badly he wants to play and what he thinks he could get elsewhere later on in the summer.
Okay. Go ahead with some of the more of the text at 49451. Go
Dear
ahead.
show, don't want anything to do with the cap circus. Not good enough quarterback to deal with it.
Okay.
Dear show, unless they really suck, don't mess with their team chemistry.
Unless who really sucks?
The backups.
Well, how would you, Hugh? You're a professional analyst of quarterbacks. How have the quarterbacks been in the training camp?
They have
would
not
you,
been.
Would you use the word suck?
Well, suck is I don't know, unnecessary, inflammatory, and personal shot. I think that they have been underperforming by a reasonable standard in an NFL camp. I also know that they have confidence that Boykin, when he gets in the game, that he seems to have a calmness to him, an ability to move the football. Out here, nobody's trying to tackle him. He has been the front runner because of that athleticism. I mean, Jake Heaps last year outperformed him in terms of making the reads and the execution in the passing game.
Right.
It's the athleticism that Boykin provided that allowed him to win that. So put him in the game, and they believe two things happen. He's a gamer in his calmness,
right,
and then he has ability to move the football team with his legs.
Okay.
And so I think that they feel okay with what they've seen because of that belief.
50-yard line seats to see the Cardinals Seahawks in the final game of the regular season. If you're willing to call us at 8:28 this morning and offer us an opinion on this particular poll question, Hugh's got something to say. He's got something on his mind, and we want
absolutely destroyed. Nelson Cruz, they're never cheap, are they? Crushed. Number 25 is a two-run shot. The Mariners now have taken a 5-1 lead.
Root Sports on the call, ladies and gentlemen. I know we're at the VMAC. I know we're spending a lot of time talking football, but don't lose sight. Don't take your sight off the baseball. Don't take your eye off the ball, folks. Mariners win again. Nelly Cruz, the seat swiper, 2 more home runs. Kyle Seager added a 3-run shot. The bullpen and the offense wins it. The bullpen comes in and throws 4 2/3 scoreless innings. The Mariners are now in sole position of the wild card, second wild card.
Yeah.
Sole possession of the wild card in the American League. And you know what they like to say, Slickhawk?
What do they like to say?
If the season ended today, which it doesn't, and it's stupid to even talk about.
There's only one man I can think of who likes to say that.
And that's Mr. Baseball Playoffs. The Mariners would be in the playoffs if the season ended on August the 10th. Unbelievable. With all the injuries. Unbelievable.
You realize that going into this series, if the Mariners beat the Angels in this series, they will be 5 games over 500.
Yes, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. You're speaking my language.
Let's do it.
It's Edgar Martinez weekend, and it begins tonight. What better of a way to start it off with James Paxton against Tyler Boz Skaggs. Lido. Left-handed pitcher of the Angels, Tyler Skaggs. That's right. 4.32 ERA. This is his second start after missing 3 months with an oblique injury tonight against the Mariners. Anyway, news from out here at the VMAC before we get to Hughes got something to say. Jermaine Ifedi and Frank Clark back practicing. Clark on a limited basis, coach's discretion. Shaq Griffin, who was our guest, if you missed him, an immensely likable young man. We'll give you another chance in the 9 o'clock hour to hear his story, his first ever visit here on the show. He picked off Russell Wilson. I scolded him for that. No picking off Russell Wilson. He obviously didn't read the manual when he got to town. He picked off Russell Wilson and went all the way back for a touchdown yesterday. As Shaq Griffin continues to wow the observers, we'll see him on Sunday probably in a first-team cornerback role, the third-round draft choice out of the University of Central Florida. Ethan Posick did some work at center yesterday. Jordan Roos was the first-team left guard. Jermaine Kearse made some plays. I think we're about to hear more about Jermaine Kearse in a second, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. Indians acquired Jay Bruce from the Mets. Michael Porter's younger brother, Jante, reclassifies, will be a freshman this season at Missouri. And the PGA Championship is underway in Charlotte. Gary Woodland, the bomber, the big-time slammer, Gary Woodland, is your leader at 3 under, early stages of the first round of the PGA Championship. Slickhawk, hit the button, please. You know when a kicker's having a good training camp, Hugh Millen?
When he's banging the cameraman who's perched right between the middle of the uprights.
When he's banging the cameraman.
You want to know when the kicker's kicking really good? When he's banging
kicks.
the cameraman at training camp.
That's right. When he's banging the cameraman at training camp.
That ball comes in hot at those cameramen, and they can't even get out of the way.
Now, I saw some misses yesterday.
Uh-oh.
I'm just going to say, I saw some Blair and I also saw some.
Cameraman was unscathed?
Yeah, but I also saw some hits.
Yeah.
He hit a few long ones yesterday in practice, and he had, by the way, when he was kicking yesterday, and I'm sure that I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill before I get to Hugh's got something to say, but I will point this out, that when he was kicking yesterday, 38-yarder, 42-yarder, 50-yarder, 52-yarder, he had John Schneider standing right behind him. John Schneider was flanked on one side right behind the kicker as they were snapping to him and kicking, and Pete Carroll was on the other side 3 or 4 yards behind him. I mean, they were standing there watching very closely Blair Walsh try to kick field goals for the Seattle Seahawks. Don't forget, in about 25 minutes from right now, get ready to call us at 206-286-9595 or the number that nobody remembers, 1-800-829-0950. And the poll question for today is simple. The backup quarterbacks have really struggled in training camp and practices. As Hugh points out, that doesn't mean necessarily that they will struggle on Sunday night in Los Angeles against the Chargers. But my poll question is, if they do struggle on Sunday night and they do not look good, and they do not look good in preseason game number 2 next week, would you, if you were the Seahawks, take another hard, long look at Colin Kaepernick? We will get back into that conversation. You brought up how complex that conversation is and that decision. There's more considerations, according to you, than just is he a good quarterback. There's the obvious protests in the way he's gone about his business, but there's also the locker room stuff as well, which we'll get into in our next segment and open up the phone lines, give people a chance to win 50-yard line seats to the Cardinals Seahawks. Hugh?
Yeah.
What's on your mind today?
Well, there's been so much discussion about Jermaine Kearse. Yesterday, he beat Tedrick Thompson, a rookie safety, on a go route, and I, as guys like Greg Bell and what have you, it's all good natured. A lot of guys on our station kind of bring my name up when Jermaine Kearse is brought up, and Pete Carroll has said some laudatory things about him recently, and so I just want to kind of clarify where I am with Jermaine Kearse, from where it stems, and maybe talk about some facts about Jermaine Kearse. And I will say, first of all, when Tom Lee, the old program director, called me and asked me to be involved here, I had to ask myself, if I'm going to come on the radio, am I willing to make the tough comments? And because I wouldn't want to listen to, let's say, Steve Pelleur, my predecessor at the University of Washington, if he played in the NFL, if I was driving around, would I want to listen to Steve Pelleur? Well, I'd want to listen to Steve Pelleur if I knew he did two things. If I knew he worked hard and he studied and he really watched the tape and he was informed, and I would want to listen to him if he was willing to make the tough comment. That doesn't mean you have to enjoy making the tough comment, but if you're not willing to make the tough comment, I don't know. I feel like for me, I had to be willing to do that. It's not personal. Jermaine Kearse is from local, Lakes High School, obviously the University of Washington. I am rooting for Jermaine Kearse, but my eyeballs tell me something. And that's subjective. For example, the other day in that scrimmage, Jermaine Kearse is matched up against Mike Davis, a 5'9" backup corner in the slot, no safety over the top. Russell Wilson's the quarterback. He releases, and it's a go route. If Russell Wilson, the light doesn't get greener than that matchup. But Jermaine doesn't have the separation. He's throwing somewhere else for a 4-yard completion. And I'm looking at him saying, no, in the NFL, that ball has to go to him. And so I implore people to say, don't just evaluate him on balls thrown to him, also on all the plays. But I wanted to get not into the subjectivity, but I wanted to get into some objective facts that nobody can dispute. Okay, so let me throw a couple things out.
Sure.
Pro Football Focus was purchased by Chris Collinsworth, and they are employed by 28 out of the 32 teams. Okay.
Really?
Yes.
Chris Collinsworth owns Pro Football Focus?
Yes, he does. And
I never knew that.
And 28
Is that a long time thing?
It's relatively, but
really?
about a year.
Okay.
Okay. Again, I'm very careful here to use facts that cannot be disputed. 28 of the 32 teams hire out the information from Pro Football Focus.
Okay.
They have a ranking of 115 wide receivers from a year ago. Jermaine Kearse was ranked 111. If you take the wide receivers, every wide receiver in the National Football League that was targeted a pass, at least one pass, there was 203 in the National Football League.
At least one pass thrown to them.
Yes. And so what we can do is we can assign a passer rating on balls thrown to the wide receiver. Okay? And in looking at the Seahawks, on all passes thrown to all receivers, the Seahawks had a 96.1 passer rating. That was 13th in the league.
Russell Wilson,
yes.
Yes.
When throwing to wide receivers alone.
Oh, just wide receivers. Okay.
His overall rating was 92.6.
Okay.
But throwing to all Seahawk receivers, he was 96.1.
Got it.
But with the help of Microsoft Excel, what you can do is you can take every single receiver in the NFL who is targeted at least one time,
yes,
and you can say what is the passer rating for that team on throwing to every other wide receiver but that particular receiver. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The receiver rating for throwing to every other wide receiver not named Jermaine Kearse for Seattle was 109.4. Again, counting Jermaine, it was 96.1. So what we can do is we can say that Jermaine's Kearse's passer rating was 57.5. When you throw all passes thrown to Jermaine Kearse,
caught or not caught, incompletions or not,
the passer rating was 57.5.
Interceptions or not interceptions.
But the passer rating throwing to all other Seattle Seahawks receivers was 109.4. That represents a decline or drop of 51.9 points in the passer rating. Now, of the 203 receivers that were targeted in the NFL at least one time, just thrown to it all, there were 142 of those 203 that were targeted 15 times or more. Jermaine Kearse was targeted 76 times. So let me say it again. How many receivers in the NFL were targeted 15 times or more? The answer is 142. Jermaine Kearse's drop, the passer rating, when you drop of 51.9, that is the number one drop, meaning put the whole list, he is 142nd out of 142 receivers who were targeted 15 times or more in the NFL, and in fact, he was targeted 76 times. We hear so much, well, Russell Wilson has
great
confidence in him.
Yeah, Greg Bell said
Have you heard the saying, your actions speak so loudly, I cannot hear your words? Jermaine Kearse was targeted on 539 routes that he ran out. He was targeted 14.1% of the times.
76 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
76. Yeah. 14.1%. That is number 187 in the league. Of the receivers that were that ran 500 or more routes, there was 37. his production, 0.95. There's only 2 guys in the NFL who had less than a yard per route run. He was 36th out of 37, meaning the percent you're targeted could be just a little check down. How much are you actually producing? You're a wide receiver. Only 2 out of 37 had less than a yard of production.
He was one of them.
And he was one of them.
Right.
So these are all facts in terms of you've got a franchise quarterback.
This is a bad year. You're giving us only last year's numbers, right?
Last year's
numbers.
numbers.
Let me try, despite the fact that generally speaking I'm in your court. Let me try to. I think good radio would be.
Yeah.
Let me present the other side to you.
Yeah.
A couple of things. Number one, you are completely focused on last year's stats. I think there are members of the organization who may or may not have actually said publicly, Jermaine Kearse had a bad year last year. Okay. We're making decisions on Jermaine Kearse moving forward. We're forgetting last year, forgetting the year before. Does he belong on this team based on the other wide receivers? The other thing I would say to your comment that my actions speak louder than my words, because he is targeted so infrequently. Greg Bell, if he were sitting here, might say, but what about in the big moments? Let's not talk about overall targets. Let's talk about when the chips are down and Russell Wilson needs to make a play. How often, and I don't know how to quantify this, how often in the big moments, Super Bowl and biggest plays in Seahawks passing history, and how often does Russell Wilson look Jermaine Kearse's way in the big moments might have a big, wouldn't you agree, would be a big indicator on how much he trusts or doesn't trust Jermaine Kearse.
There's no question that he has 3 of the biggest catches in the history of the franchise. He had the 49er catch on the 4th down. He had the Green Bay post route.
And the Super Bowl
that
catch.
Russell Wilson walked to him in the NFC Championship game, and he had the bobbling Super Bowl catch. Okay, there's no question. When you're playing a lot of big games, you're going to have opportunities. John Starks, the number 2 guard when the Knicks were in the playoffs, you could find 3 big three-point shots that he hit at some point along the line. That doesn't mean that he was an elite 2 guard in the league.
I understand.
Okay?
I'm speaking to the question of whether Russell Wilson trusts Jermaine Kearse so much so that he needs to be on the roster.
Well, we'd have to.
That's what I'm talking to, that issue.
Well, my answer would be, first of all, if we're trying to get data, we'd have to say, okay, let's filter these plays. I think it should also be noted that on the most infamous play in Seahawks history, Jermaine Kearse, all he had to do was take an inside release. I could find 10 guys at Skyline High School that could take an inside release, literally put them on that field, and Seattle wins the Super Bowl there. So that's somewhat offset there. What I'm doing is I'm presenting some data to you as an indicator, but it goes beyond that for me in terms of saying, look, I was a hack backup quarterback in the NFL, but sitting in the rooms with John Elway, Troy Aikman, Dan Marino, a couple other Pro Bowl guys, and Jim Everett, Chris Miller, right? And listening to some really great coaches and quarterbacks talk about the mindset of a quarterback and how coverage dictates where the ball should be going. I mentioned that go route the other day. I could mention hundreds of other plays where you watch and you say, hang on, there's single coverage here. Why is the ball not going here? That if you're not getting completions from that position, you're punting and you're losing ground here. You've got to win on those situations, and that happens too often. And so what I would do, and I've seen in multiple situations where you have a veteran receiver who has, some clout in the locker room. He's a popular guy, what have you. And there's a certain psychology for young guys. They tend to be deferential. And you retard the development of a younger receiver who could see it. It's like pruning the forest. if you think a tree can only get so high, you gotta knock that thing down and allow the sunlight to grab.
Got you.
Okay, and Rod Smith would be an example with the Broncos, who is the Broncos' all-time leading receiver. He was a guy who was on the practice squad, a young guy. Anthony Miller had all of the accolades before. The Broncos made the decision, no, we got to get rid of Anthony Miller so that we can create an environment where you're looking at these young guys and say, no, you don't have to defer to the veteran who's been around and has a Super Bowl touchdown and all that. No, you go grab that thing. And so I'm going to stand by it until I see something. Okay. My eyes tell me something different.
Let me ask you, in wrapping up the Hughes Got Something to Say segment, let me ask you a question or two moving forward, okay? Drawing upon the experiences that you just mentioned of being in those rooms. If the Seahawks saw it the same way as you, let's assume that John Schneider, just for a second, and Pete Carroll concluded this training camp, Hughes right, and we decide we want to go a different direction and empower some of these younger guys. I have two questions for you based on your knowledge of how these things work. Number one, would they go to Russell Wilson before they cut Jermaine Kearse and say, we've decided to go in a different direction, but we want your opinion. We want your input on this. Here's what we've decided to do. A, would they even do that, or would they just go do it? And B, if they did do it, and this is really highly speculative, what do you think Russell Wilson would say to them if given the opportunity to inject his input before they made roster decisions? So let's take on those two questions.
Well, I think that
did they go to Elway?
No, I don't.
Did they go to Marino? Did they go to Aikman when they wanted to dismiss a receiver that had caught a lot of balls from them in the past, or did they just do it and they told him about it later?
I think you'd have situations where it could be both, and here they could just make that decision, and that's the direction we're going. And I'm not going to say that they wouldn't or they would. I don't know. I think either side would be reasonable. If they did, Jermaine Kearse is on the second to last year of a contract. He had a $5.5 million signing bonus, so that's prorated at 1.8.
You save $400,000 against the cap this year.
No, you don't.
That's what it said in the newspaper yesterday. I'm sure. Did I read that right? That you would save $400,000? I
think you save more because it's after June 1st. You spread the cap hit over this year and next year.
I thought I read $400,000 in Bob.
You're going to be in this situation. He's under contract for 2018, but he's at $5 million next year.
Answer my question.
We're going to be in this situation.
So you're not sure whether they would or wouldn't. I think that they would because I think it's Pete Carroll's, kind of empowering the players. It seems like it would be Pete Carroll's. He would say to Schneider, no, we're going to Russell Wilson. We're going to talk to him about this. That just seems to me, I'm just a guess, that's Pete Carroll's kind of MO and personality. You have any guess at what Russell Wilson would say?
I think he'd be a company guy, and I think he'd understand.
Whatever you guys think is best.
Yeah. I don't think. Put it this way, the passer rate.
We got to wrap it up. Okay. Go ahead. We can come back to it, but we have to wrap it up.
Well, in terms of the passer rating for the other guys, you got Doug Baldwin at 119.7, Tyler Lockett 97, Paul Richardson at 92.
This is last year again.
Yeah,
we're back to last year.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we're clear. Hughes got something to say.
And here you got Jermaine Kearse at 57.5.
And so Hughes got something to say, and what Hughes got to say is it's time to move on from Jermaine Kearse.
Correct.
To wrap it up. It's time to move on from Jermaine Kearse.
Let some of these younger guys have an opportunity. Open it up and let somebody emerge through there without having the psychology of the deferential to a veteran.
The backup quarterback question and poll question. Your chance to win 50-yard line seats. Call now. 206-286-9595 or the number that nobody remembers, 1-800-829-0950. All you got to do is participate to be in the drawing for 50-yard liners for the final game of the regular season, New Year's Eve. 50-yard line club seat, not club seats, 50-yard line seats to see 50-yard line seats to see Game 16 of the regular season, the final game of the regular season, Cardinals Seahawks. By now, you know, here at the VMAC with UB Love Millen, we have a poll question every day, and we give you a chance for the drawing. Anybody who participates on the phone lines right now will go into the drawing for the 50-yard line seats to see the Cardinals and the Seahawks on New Year's Eve. Could be for everything. Could be for home field advantage. Could be for the West. Could be for the wild card. Could be for anything. Seeds and buys and all kinds of good stuff. Okay? But you got to participate on the phone lines at 206-286-9595 or the number that nobody remembers, 1-800-829-0950. I want you in the short version, I want you to summarize, if you would, please, what you think are the nuances and the locker room complexities to the decision of whether you would bring in or they would bring in Colin Kaepernick. Again, we're assuming, and this is not a safe assumption, I understand this, that the two backup quarterbacks play poorly as they have during training camp, play poorly in the first couple of preseason games. My poll question for the listeners, for the 50-yard line seats, is very simple. If the Davis and Boykin tandem play poorly the first couple of games in the preseason, would you, A, stay the course and just hope that it gets better, B, bring in Colin Kaepernick to be your backup quarterback, offer him the job, C, offer Robert Griffin III the job, or D, bring in somebody else not named Griffin or Kaepernick? You got four choices if the two guys struggle the first couple of preseason games. And you went through a discussion at 6:45 that I think you should repeat for our listeners right now.
Well, I think if I'm making the decision, I've got to consider everything, and I got to take double bogey and triple bogey out of play. I mean, you're always considering, although improbable, a worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
And I think that there's a unique dynamic in two regards.
First of all, could you make the argument that some would say you're not taking double or triple bogey out of play if Russell Wilson gets hurt by not signing the best quarterback that you can sign? You'd actually be taking triple bogey and double bogey out of play if you had Colin Kaepernick in the event that Russell Wilson actually got hurt and the backup quarterback had to play. Could you reverse the look on double and triple bogey that way?
Yeah, I mean, if Colin Kaepernick is appreciably better than
everybody else,
sign him and go.
Okay.
But I'm not saying ultimately that this would be the deciding factor, but a factor that I think should be considered is kind of the nature of the locker room and how is it likely to be perceived. You've got Baldwin and Michael Bennett and Richard Sherman have gone on record in national publications saying that Kaepernick needs to have this opportunity. I mean, for obvious reasons, I think he is captivated, the spirit of a lot of people for some good reasons, some very commendable reasons. And so not all of what Kaepernick is doing is unwelcome. And so, I mean, there's many layers to that.
What's the concern?
The concern would be Russell Wilson, and I told you 6:45. I have immense respect for him. That YouTube video of him at that San Diego church, I watched it, then had my kids come in. Sorry, Mitch, I got to preface this because I'm about to say something that could be deemed controversial. You asked me to say it again. I need to tell you how I feel about Russell Wilson, the man.
Okay.
And I think that he's respected immensely in that room, but I think that there is a street credibility component that
define that.
Well,
he's not one of the guys.
Yeah, not necessarily one of the guys. There's a certain, he's just kind of hanging out. The term street credibility exists because people have kind of identified, what that constitutes. Maybe Slick could jump in here, but the question would be, if everything's going great, we think that the Seahawks are 11-5 team, 12-4 team, maybe 13-3 team. Vegas has them in a handful of Super Bowl champs. But if they had a down year and Russell Wilson had a down year, could you have a situation where Kaepernick is such a galvanizing personality that you could then have people saying, wait a minute, why don't we have competition at the quarterback position?
Right.
And now you've got a guy in Russell Wilson. There's a certain awkwardness in terms of how he relates. I think, again, he's immensely respected in that locker room, but he's not a street credibility type of guy. Kaepernick, in theory, could be that guy.
And that would present a problem.
Not in good times.
In bad times.
But in bad times, that could present a problem, and you could have a little bit of a hornet's nest in terms of the dynamics in the locker room.
Slickhawk, speak to what he's talking about, Hugh, in terms of street cred, and try to define that better for me and everybody else that wants to understand exactly what we're talking about.
Hugh makes a good point, and I think he's viewed by many in the locker room to be a front office guy. You know, the guy that's going to be chummy with John Schneider and Pete Carroll and be caring about more their message than maybe others on the team. Or he's going to be the guy at the Super Bowl who's in the owner's box with Roger Goodell kind of chopping it up. And that's fine. That's what most quarterbacks are. Tom Brady's and Peyton Manning's faces of the league. But there's a difference here because most quarterbacks, when you look around the league, most quarterbacks are white. And so that is a difference.
And it's not a problem. You're saying it's not a problem in other locker rooms when they're white because why? Explain. It's not a problem that they're considered front office guys when they're white quarterbacks, and it is a problem. It could be a problem when they're black guys.
Because 70% of the league is black, and so there's a little bit of an us versus them mentality. I mean, that's just natural when you have black and white. It's just what's going to happen. And so Russell Wilson, it could very easily be viewed as more of somebody who's one of them. Being a front office guy.
And Colin Kaepernick would not be one of them.
Right.
He'd be one of us.
Right. I think he's very much not a front office guy, especially right now.
And so now what Hugh says is they start losing a game here and there. The quarterback play slips. Mm-hmm. We hope it doesn't happen. We don't think it will happen. And they're having bumpy, and you got Colin Kaepernick in that locker room who's got street cred and is one of the guys when Russell Wilson isn't. And, of course, they would stay with Russell Wilson until he was not able to play physically. And you're saying that could present a problem where the locker room says, hey, this guy's one of us. Why is he not getting a shot here? Why do you preach competition, but you're not practicing what you preach at the quarterback position?
And there's murmurs and there's whispers behind the back and jokes being made, and all of a sudden Russell Wilson's being ostracized. In a locker room, he's supposed to be controlling, and you have another quarterback who is kind of leading that charge.
Okay. Slick, what is street credibility in your mind? You've seen the sociology within the military and what have you. How would you define that?
I mean, it can mean a lot of different things. In this case, I think what I'm talking about is more the case than necessarily street cred. When we talk about street credibility, it's people's perception of you to either handle your business, so to speak, in a lot of times in a physical way, or to be kind of a tough guy. Somebody who's, you talk about real tough guys and fake tough guys, and real tough guys, they have street cred, and fake tough guys don't.
All right, so to put all this into a bow, let's wrap this up and get your guys' opinion, then go to the phone lines in our next segment and give people a chance to win the tickets. Considering all that you've said, you guys have said a lot. Answer the question. Answer the question.
Who first?
The two guys struggle in the first two preseason games. Would you, A, stay the course, B, bring Colin Kaepernick, considering all the things that you've just considered, C, Robert Griffin III, or D, just bring in some other veteran quarterback and try to improve your backup situation in another way not named Griffin or Kaepernick? Hugh.
Well, first of all, the dynamic we've been discussing wouldn't paralyze me. It would be something I would consider. I read a Sports Illustrated article that an unnamed personnel director said when they were considering Andy Dalton, hey, we even looked into, why aren't there redheaded quarterbacks? Probably doesn't correlate, but we got to ask the question.
Okay.
So it would not paralyze me.
What's your answer?
all things considered, I would probably go with an look elsewhere.
In the D.
All things considered.
Not named Griffin, not Kaepernick.
Yes.
Okay.
Given
Slickhawk?
now,
Yeah.
I want to say this. I think Boykin's going to play well enough.
Okay, that's not the point.
Yeah,
that's
and,
not. That's
and
not
I think
part
he's
of
going to be the
bullpen.
backup.
Okay, but given what I just laid
Yeah.
out for you,
Given
okay.
that, I would say D.
D.
Yeah.
Slickhawk?
Right now, given what I've seen in practice and what I saw in the mock game, I'm ready for B. I'm ready to see what Colin Kaepernick looks like.
Okay. Listeners get their chance to vent their spleen and have their voices heard and have a chance to win great seats to a great game as well. Next on 950 KJR. Dustin Johnson for par at the first, his 10th from 3 feet. Got it. Anyway, 8:45 on 950 KJR. The PGA Championship continues. We're live at the VMAC where practice is about to begin, or at least a little while. We had Shaq Griffin. By the way, Shaq Griffin, Slickhawk, can you up his volume of his voice enough for people to hear our first visit with the incredibly likable, young-looking, he looks younger than my son. My son looks older than him. Max Levy looks older than Shaq Griffin.
Wow. How does it sound? Hold on, you tell me.
OTAs and all the, little mini camps. We couldn't do that.
Good. That sounds great. Let's do that in our next segment for the people that weren't with us in the 7 o'clock hour and didn't hear the first ever visit on the morning show of the young man with all kinds of character, charisma. He oozes personality. Or let's put it this way. He oozes character.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that a better way to say it? He oozes character based on the stories involving his brother, his twin brother, and so forth. We'll let you hear from Shaq Griffin here in our next segment before the 12th Man Roundtable, our mini 12th Man Daily Roundtable from here at the VMAC. All right. Hugh has spoken. He says D. If the quarterback struggled, if the backup quarterback struggled in the first 2 preseason games, which, by the way, he wants to point out he doesn't think will happen, if they do, he would go with D. Not Kaepernick, not Griffin, and not status quo. Bring in some other veteran quarterbacks to see if you can improve your second string situation. Slickhawk says Colin Kaepernick is the answer if the two guys struggle, correct?
Yep.
Mitch Levy says Robert Griffin III, just to make it a nice, even...
No. We're on the honor system. No.
What do you mean, nah? What do you mean, nah?
We're all comfortable operating within the honor system. You'd say your real opinion. Don't just say, well, I'm going to choose that just so that we have 3 different answers.
I would offer Colin Kaepernick the veteran minimum to be my backup quarterback if the two guys struggle the first 2 preseason games. Now, I don't think he's going to take that. I think that Colin Kaepernick wants to get paid, whether he's a backup or anything else. First of all, I don't think he wants to be a backup. I think he wants to wait for an opportunity to go in and play. Second of all, I don't think he's taking the veteran minimum from anybody, even though he's out of a job. But I would offer Colin Kaepernick the veteran minimum to be my backup quarterback if in the first 2 preseason games Boykin and Davis look the way they've looked in the training camp. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did.
Are you satisfied with my answer?
Well, if that's the honest answer, then yes.
That's the answer. All right? So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Andre in Tacoma. Anybody who participates goes in the drawing for the 50-yard line seats to see the Cardinals Seahawks on New Year's Eve. Okay, Andre in Tacoma, A, B, C, or D, and I don't even know what they are anymore. Go.
So I'm saying no cap, but I'm going E, Mitch, and sign Hugh Breedlove Millen.
Hugh Breedlove Millen.
53 years old. Yeah, jeez, yeah.
Is it the age that's the problem, or will you know?
No, there's that's just sprinkled in amongst many problems.
Scott in Woodinville, what would you do if the two guys really struggle the first 2 games?
I'm going with D.
Okay.
Griffin's got too much of a durability issue. Kaepernick, too much drama and baggage. And I never cared for Boykin anyway, so I go D all the way.
Okay, I understand that. Slickhawk, I have him on my list. Nate in Bothell is next on 950 KJR. He's in the hat for the drawing. Go ahead, Nate.
I think you're going to have to sign Kaepernick and give the Seahawks a viable opportunity to win in case anything happens to Russell.
Okay. All right, so we've got an E We've got somebody not named Griffin or Kaepernick, and we've got a Kaepernick, at least from the phone callers. We've got 2 Kaepernicks with us and 1 D with you. Christine in Seattle. Or is it Kristen? Kristen? Christine.
Christine.
Okay. Go ahead.
I say bring him in. Give him an opportunity.
Okay.
I think that he would fit in really well with our offense. I honestly think, though, he is going to land a starting job, like you said, elsewhere. And he's probably just going to hold out and wait for that opportunity.
Okay. Christine says go with Colin Kaepernick. Bob in North Bend.
Got to be B. Competition make Russell better, and, God forbid an injury. At least we got a good backup.
You're saying Colin Kaepernick?
Yep.
Are you not worried with what these guys are discussing with the street cred and the locker room, and if Russell struggles, the guys might kind of revolt a little bit and wonder why Kaepernick's gotten a chance? You don't worry about any of that, Bob?
Nah, they're not true Seahawks then if they're stabbing people in the back in the locker room.
Okay. Steve in Lake Stevens. Steve in Lake Stevens, you're next up.
Morning, guys. I trust in Schneider and Carroll that the Kaepernick insurance policy is too expensive. I'm going to have to go with Hugh. D, although I would have a write-in of Charlie Whitehead because he just looks so good carrying a clipboard. But I definitely go with
Whitehurst.
Who? Charlie who?
Whitehurst.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Anyway.
D it is. Nate in Seattle, you're next up. You're in the hat for the drawing. Go ahead, Nate.
B, sign him.
Colin Kaepernick.
Best option to win some games.
Not worried about what happens in the locker room and street cred and all that stuff.
Nah, no, I don't think any of that stuff's newsworthy after a week or two.
Okay. Newsworthy after a week or two. Okay, go ahead. Slickhawk, give me some more names.
All right, Cameron and Randall.
Cameron in Randall.
Yeah, I think he's more likely to divide the locker room than he is to help us out. I mean, if Russell stays healthy, we don't even need him.
Okay. So
I say don't sign him. We don't.
That's not what my question was. Cameron, that's not the question. The question is, what would you do? Would you stay status quo? Would you sign him, Robert Griffin, or D, somebody not named any of them?
I'd just keep somebody on there. They can develop those guys even if they're not doing good this year.
So it's status quo. You would stay with Boykin and Davis.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Thank you, Cameron. Next caller, Slickhawk.
Dwayne in Seattle.
Dwayne in Seattle.
Yeah, I think if the other two guys aren't performing, I'd go with D, go out and find some better talent there.
Okay, but do not mess with Kaepernick and do not mess with Robert Griffin III.
No, sir.
Okay, next, Slickhawk.
Scott in Kingston.
Scott in Kingston's in the hat. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Mitchie, the way I look at it is you got to think to yourself, it's game 4, and Russell's hurt, and are we going to feel better about having Boykin in there or Kaepernick? It's got to be Kaepernick.
Yeah.
No question.
But hang on a second. Hang on.
These are grown men in this locker room. They can put up with whatever.
Yeah.
But this is a different question.
Yeah.
If you said to me, okay, Russell Wilson, God forbid, breaks a leg, and now, you've got 16 games, that's a different question than a hypothetical. We've gone 2-3 games into it, and the backups are playing poorly, but Russell's healthy, and that's a totally different question.
Yeah, well, I'm not introducing the idea that I'm not saying necessarily that he's going to get hurt. I'm not going to predict injury. What I'm going to say is that the two guys have looked below average.
The caller just
the caller's just saying, hey, in the case, what he wants is that there's a chance that Russell Wilson will break his leg in your scenario, and if that's even a possibility, then I want Colin Kaepernick as my backup to go help us win games. That's what the caller's saying. I think. I don't want to speak for the caller.
Then you would say that right now.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. But I'm not introducing that as part of the scenario, and I understand the difference of opinion between you and him. All right, Shaq Griffin, would you like to be introduced to this likable young man who we all hope is going to be the answer at the cornerback position opposite of Richard Sherman. He joined us in the 7 o'clock hour. You'll hear from him next on 950 KJR. Live from the VMAC, it's 9 o'clock on Sports Radio 950 KJR, and we are celebrating a Thursday. We are just a few days away from seeing this football team on a football field. Yes, it's an exhibition game, but I'm very, 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 to use the word from yesterday, curious to see a lot of guys on this football team. But no more curious than to see number 26 play in a football game against an opposing team. The guy's name is Shaq Griffin. He's the third rounder out of UCF, University of Central Florida. We're going to hear from him in just a few moments. In case you missed it, ICYMI from 7 o'clock this morning or 7:30 this morning, Shaq Griffin, who we all think is going to be the starting outside corner opposite of Richard Sherman come opening day. But first, let me get you updated on the headlines. Jermaine Ifedi and Frank Clark back practicing. Clark on a limited basis yesterday. Shaq Griffin, by the way, picked off Russell Wilson and returned him for a touchdown yesterday. We'll joke with him about that in a minute. Ethan Posick did some work at center. Jordan Roos got left guard experience, first-team left guard experience. We're going to hear from the 12th man roundtable, Condota, Bell, and Millen at 9:30 this morning, a daily occurrence during training camp, a little mini 12th man roundtable at 9:30. Mariners do it again. Is it smoke and mirrors? I don't know. If it is smoke and mirrors, then the smoke is the offense and the mirrors is the bullpen, because the starting pitching, again, was terrible yesterday with Yovani Gallardo, and they won anyway. And they're now in sole possession of wild card number 2 in the American League. Unbelievable. Kansas City continues its tailspin. Tampa can't win a game. The Mariners are in sole possession of WC2, and they're 2.5 games back of the New York Yankees, thanks to Nelson Cruz's 2 homers, Kyle Seager's 3-run shot, and a bullpen that throws 4 2/3 shutout innings. A 4-game series against the Angels begins tonight. Cue the Lido. Tyler Skaggs, a left-hander with a 4.32 ERA. Second start after missing 3 months with an oblique injury. Does anybody understand this reference? This would be Boz Skaggs. Uncle Boz. Tyler's Uncle Boz. James Paxton for the Mariners tonight. Indians acquired Jay Bruce from the Mets. Let's see here. Michael Porter's younger brother, Jonte, reclassifies and will be a freshman this season at Missouri. And the PJ Championship's underway over there at Quail Hollow. Last check, I've not looked at the leaderboard. Gary Woodland, the big bomber, the big strapping Kansan. I think he's from Kansas.
I told you we should have taken Gary Woodland.
Gary Woodland.
That's what I said.
Is your leader early in the first round, with some of the great players on the course and some still yet to tee off, like Rory McIlroy. Last check, Jordan Spieth, in search of the career Grand Slam, was even through about 8 or 9 holes. Okay, 9:04 on 950 KJR. We're about to get the 12th man roundtable in here at 9:30. But before we do that, let me get one more piece of analysis from you to kind of set up the Shaq Griffin story. We know that the the experts said about the draft in April that this was a heavy cornerback draft. There were some really good corners in the first few rounds of the draft, and they mentioned them. There were 8 or 10 of them, and Shaq Griffin was not mentioned. He played at the University of Central Florida with his twin brother. He was off the radar. And all I hear from Hugh Millen since the day Hugh Millen put eyes on him for the first time, not only on tape, but here in mini camps and so forth, Hugh has been very bullish on Shaq Griffin from the first set of exercises and mini camp activities that you've seen from him. So my question to you earlier, and I'll ask it again before we listen to him, because he was on the show with us earlier, and give the people at home and in their cars and wherever they might be a chance to hear him. Why do you think a guy that looks so good physically, the body looks good, the speed is terrific, the skills, I know that he was at Central Florida and not coached particularly well. What is it that all these NFL scouts didn't see in Shaq Griffin in terms of all these other guys that were first-rounders and second-rounders.
Well, in watching the tape, he gave up some touchdowns. He gave up completions. He allowed in-breaking routes, in particular slants and in routes and skinny post. His technique just, a lot of those routes are easier to complete for a quarterback, and his technique just surrendered those routes too easily. Numerous occasions where his recognition of route combinations to his side, where you're not just covering your guy and have your focus on your guy, but you're playing zone coverage.
Right.
And you have to be aware of inside receivers, whether it's a trips and you got two inside receivers, or it's a 2x2 and you have one inside receiver, guys coming at you in your area. Did that kind of just freeze him momentarily and what have you? So I would say there was questions about his reaction and processing in that. But that's somewhat negated by how Seattle plays. They play press, and in an ideal world, they're jamming and they're taking away that inside release. They're funneling to the outside. They play a patient brand of bump and run, a relatively passive brand of bump and run, where they're not going to have contact in certain circumstances based on the release of the receiver. They may have some contact based on the release of the receiver, and then funnel to the outside. And then he doesn't have Richard Sherman's height to go run down the field with him, but he's faster than Richard Sherman, and his turn of hips and his acceleration is better than Richard Sherman. So that's why I'm bullish, but the reasons I mentioned are some of the problems.
Okay. So summarize for everybody who didn't hear about it, weren't here. What happened yesterday? Give just a quick 30-second rendition. And was this an interception that Jeremy Lane would have made? Is this an interception that one of the younger guys, one of the other younger guys would have made? Or was this a really good play by Shaq Griffin to intercept Russell Wilson and take him to the house?
Jermaine Kearse in the left slot on an out-breaking route. You have to be aware, if you're a quarterback, of the corner's responsibility to the outside, even though he's not the defender lined up over Kearse. And I've heard the term bird dog. You had in that situation Griffin kind of laying there waiting
in the weeds.
Laying in the weeds, and Russ just missed the
So
read,
anybody makes that interception?
No.
Okay.
Anybody could have broken that up. I think that it was somewhat deft in terms of how Shaq was able to use his body relative to Jermaine Kearse. He indicated that there wasn't a collision. There was somewhat of a collision. I know what my eyes saw. He had to battle for that ball.
Okay.
And
he did?
Yeah. And he did, and he made it, and he was gone.
Okay. All right. So he was sitting here, and I told him, hold on, young man. When you report to work here, there's a manual. You're not supposed to be intercepted number 3. Obviously, he didn't get the memo that he's not supposed to be picking off Russell Wilson.
Well, the only thing they told me when to get here was to compete. And, going through OTAs and all the, little mini camps, we couldn't do that. Was following by the rules and making sure we're taking care of our teammates. Now we're into camp, and they said they want to see what I was about. And, the one thing I do, I love to compete. I love this game, and that's something, I come out here to do. And that's something I have to do to keep competing.
Well, keep doing it. It was entertaining to all of us.
Pick off the other team's guy, not our guy.
In a game, are you housing that, or does Russell get your knee on the ground? What do you think?
Oh, no, in the game, I'm definitely, I'm going full speed. And, I'm going to cover ground really quickly, and I'm going to get in the end zone.
All right.
He's got the angle on him, though, doesn't he? I mean, you were there yesterday when you saw. Who had the angle?
I think there's a fair debate. There's a fair debate as to how that would have played out, but I don't know. If you had a little shimmy shake at some point, I think he could have put that in the house, right?
He said shimmy shake. He's saying that he's not going to need a shimmy shake.
You're just going to outrun him.
I got to get you guys on the same page here.
Russ had a little angle. It was a little bit of there was a little bit of physical confrontation. What I told Mitch earlier was that wasn't just a clean play. I mean, you had to battle for that ball, and ultimately, it's a nice play if it's an incomplete and you knock that down. But it could potentially a game changer if you find a way to snatch that thing like you did and return it.
Oh yeah, and definitely. And the way I caught that in practice, my main focus was to make sure I didn't make contact, with Jermaine Kearse. At the end of the day, I'm taking care of my teammates, so my main goal is to stay out the way, So that's the reason why I had to spin the way I did. And, I'm just trying to make sure I take care of everybody. I'm not trying to run into nobody. We need everybody. So
We need them all?
Yeah, definitely. So my main thing was if I could get the ball, I would. But my main focus was to stay out the way and make sure I run into nobody.
The voice of Shaq Griffin, who are so thrilled to have. You're going to get a chance to see him on TV for the first time on Sunday. He's going to make his NFL debut, preseason NFL debut, and we've got him right here in front of us here on KJR. We're so close to all of this stuff. You're a Florida guy. You're from a million miles. I'm from Florida. I know how far Florida is. It's about as far as you can go. You're a million miles away, and we're sitting here watching Deshaun Shedd get hurt. We're worrying about who's going to be the corner, who's going to step into that spot. This is last year, and you're just playing college. Did you know how much did you follow? Did you follow the NFL? I don't know who your team was. If I had said to you what's going on in Seattle with their corners, you would know Richard Sherman, of course. But you may not be aware. Did you know what you were getting yourself into, that you were coming here and all the Seahawks fans are like, we need a guy to step into that corner. Did you know all of this or did you not know all of this?
Well, I wasn't sure about everything until I, made my first visit here, and after the draft day, they told me how good of a situation I was in. After that, I took it all in. At first, I didn't know. Of course, I knew, Richard Sherman is some people who I follow. I ain't have a specific team, but I had specific players. So just to be here and to be in this great opportunity is perfect. I continued to understand that as I got closer to this, the program after I got drafted. I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Who are the players?
The players was, I follow Ray Lewis, I follow Richard Sherman. I followed the whole Baltimore crew. They all came from Miami, and I was a huge Miami fan growing up.
Okay.
So I followed that whole crew growing up.
You mentioned your early days in Florida. You have a remarkable story, at least as I think I understand it, and maybe you can share it. You have a twin brother. He had an unfortunate situation at birth where some problems there. You were recruited to play for the Miami Hurricanes and a lot of other big-time programs, but reportedly you insisted, hey, if you're not giving my brother a scholarship, despite the fact he doesn't have a hand due to a problem in the womb, then I'm not coming. You're not recruiting me either. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell us that story and how you were convicted to make that stand for your brother.
Well, we had a bond that, was unbreakable. It's definitely unbreakable, and then we created this package deal coming soon we got to high school. We didn't know how the offer was going to be set up, but we knew for a fact we was going to stay with each other no matter what. We're definitely that close. And once the offers started pulling in, and like I said, Miami was my favorite school, but at the end of the day, they wasn't offering my brother, and my main goal was to stay with him and stick around with him. So, after that whole process started, we had a couple of schools who was offering both of us, but we also wanted to stay closer to home. And I had some bigger offers, but they wasn't offering him. So, that made it clear that if you're not offering my brother, there's no reason to offer me. So I took a visit to UCF, and I met with George O'Leary. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was, well, I'm not taking one without the other. So after that, I pretty much just fell in love with it. And, that's the reason why we ended up at UCF.
Was there any other reactions with the coaches when you said, like Miami coaches or some of these other big schools, when you said, no, I got to have my brother? Any reactions that are memorable to you?
No big reactions. I had, statements like, sometimes it's time for you to grow up and depart from your brother. But, at that time, it wasn't about me growing up. It's about, us two sticking together, and see how everything plays out. I don't take back none of the decisions I made. I feel like everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad I made the choice that I did.
Now, part of the plan, all this is good and admirable, and we're falling in love with you. But part of the plan wasn't that he was going to outplay you last year. Okay? I don't remember that being part of the plan. And from what I hear, who was the defensive player of the year in the conference?
Yeah, my brother.
Was it you?
My brother, definitely.
Was it you? No, it wasn't you. He's not supposed to outplay you. You're supposed to say to your brother, "What are you doing here? I vouch for you. I get you. I help you get into Scott. You're not supposed to come in and make me look bad."
He definitely deserved that. The first couple of years when he wasn't playing, when you can sit out for 3 years is tough, and for him to have his debut like that, that's awesome. I was so proud of him. And, that's something you deserve. It's tough going through 3 years not playing football. The game that you love is tough.
Yeah.
And, and he was so hard on, wanting to just give up and, thinking about maybe doing another sport. It's tough on him because you had, coaches who were telling him maybe this profession is not for you. it's tough to hear that, going through college. And, when Scott Frost came and they gave him a shot, he took full advantage. And you can tell, being Defensive Player of the Year, he nominated for almost 4 awards of being
That's
the
amazing.
best player in the, college football, best
That's
linebacker.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
I feel like he deserves everything that's coming for him. And, he's definitely humble. Right now he's actually staying at the facility for the whole camp.
Oh, good.
He's not even going home. He want to get the full experience. And, he really loves his game. And, I'm proud of him.
We're spending some time with Shaq Griffin. Shaq, when you got drafted, now I had played in the league. I played with Deion Sanders in Atlanta and what have you, and it was my job to study corners. And when I studied you there, one of the comments I made was you were a little too quick to give up the inside route, the slants, some in routes, skinny posts, and what have you, and that maybe that might have knocked you down in the eyes of some people in the NFL. I see you nodding your head. Maybe take us into that in terms of how that played out at UCF. Is that something you identified? Are the coaches talking to you about that? Just kind of talk about your game as to why you were a third-round pick and yet why you seem so gifted in so many important skills as a corner here.
Yeah, well, I know we play a little differently back at UCF. And, I feel like technique was my biggest thing back at UCF. I was so aggressive, and they gave receivers a chance to use that against me. I remember going on different, deep routes where I'll be trying to get extra going down the route, trying to push off and give an extra nudge, and that gave receivers enough chance to really use it against me and, get in front of me and then use it to advantage. And, now I'm just relying more on my technique and being more patient, and not just relying on just athleticism. So, that's something I learned. That's why I feel like, coming to the league, it wasn't too crazy. It's just I had to just listen, and slow everything down and just start to learn the technique that I needed to, take me further.
The voice of Shaq Griffin, first time ever on the morning show. Great to have him. Boy, does he look young. You look into his eyes, he looks really, really young. He was smiling the whole interview. I don't know if you could hear that. I don't know if you could hear that in his voice listening back to it now. But he was smiling the whole time.
I was just going to say the exact same thing. It may not have been transmitted, but he had a very genuine, sincere. You talk about his eyes, and the young look, but he just looked right. Great eye contact and just smiling and everything. Really, really pleasant disposition.
Yep. We'll root for him on Sunday when the Seahawks take the field. He should be, with Jeremy Lane's absence, the number 1 corner on that right side of the Seahawks defense, and we'll see him against some of the better receivers, at least for the Chargers, on Sunday evening. Yes.
I just have the thought, man, what if they struck gold? What if they have found themselves another Pro Bowl cornerback opposite Richard Sherman, and they could have both of them playing at the same time?
You could bring up a different conversation if they struck gold.
Yeah.
And you could bring up the Richard Sherman future conversation. I mean, there's going to be a time that Richard Sherman's going to want more money, and he's going to want another big contract and another big signing bonus. And I guess if you've got a real up-and-coming Pro Bowler on the other side, it makes that decision a little different than if Sherman's still your standout, shut down and the only guy you got on your team that's worthy of that kind of praise. And I don't know, Hugh, what do you think? I mean, it changes things if Shaq is all of a sudden like a monster out there.
Is he developing? Are you talking about Pro Bowl level this year? You may be sitting there saying, okay, we're still young enough and Richard Sherman's young enough and we're in our prime that now with Shaquille Griffin at that level, now a quarterback, really doesn't have a pigeon he can attack. And if you got a couple years there, just really ride that.
But if you've got
to
redo Sherman, you might. There's an opportunity. You bring it up all the time, more than anybody else. How much money they spend on defense versus how much money they spend on the offensive line. Now you've got a guy. This is a hell of a scenario, hell of a problem to have.
Yeah.
But if if Shaq really develops real quickly into this incredible corner, and you got him at third-round money, here's an opportunity to shift some money from the defense to the offensive side of the football, to the offensive line part of the football. You still got a commodity in Russell Wilson that you're trying to protect for the next, 8 or 10 years. There would be an opportunity for you to shift some money as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I've heard too much chatter over the last few months about Richard Sherman had a bad year last year. I think that's nonsense. I mean, I think he's in the top 5 in terms of passer rating against. It was something like under 65. I've read it recently. Don't quote me on that exact number, but I think he's still an elite corner. And I just
were you
no.
I'm getting
sorry.
from me.
No, I'm sorry.
That
I'm sorry.
That I was
and I don't want
suggesting?
to. I don't want to intimate that you were saying that. I guess I'm just in a mindset right now where Richard Sherman still has a lot of great football in him, and you're right, Mitch. Reality may confront you, and you say, for the totality of our football team, we just have to make the hard decision. But right now, as he's describing an potential emerging Pro Bowl in this hypothetical, what I'm loving is having two great corners in a single
That's
high
what he's
defense.
loving too.
Yeah.
But my suggestion to all of this is, let's let him play his first ever professional football game before we have this conversation. I think there's time for this. Should we let him play? Should we let him play his first preseason game on Sunday before we have this? Before we put him in the Pro Bowl?
I thought that wasn't even a pertinent part of the discussion. I know I've been admonished that I've got to wait, and yet here we are in training camp. The fact is, we're on the calendar. They haven't played. I think it goes without saying that we need to see him play in preseason games, plural, and get him going. Right now, I'm just telling you, what I went into the first mini camp. Now, having watched him on tape, I still wanted to see him live. And I was still a little salty about not having Kevin King. But the first time I saw him, within a half an hour, I said, I'm loving me some Shaq.
All right. And if you love yourself some Shaq, that makes me love myself some Shaq. So let's get the mini 12th man roundtable in here and find out about the little shuffling along the offensive line yesterday on 950 KJR.
Good morning from the AAA Traffic Center. Northbound 167 continues to see some delays out of Sumner. Northbound 405 heavy through the Renton S-curves and into Newcastle. Westbound 90 still dragging across Mercer Island. Northbound 5 heavy between Albro and the Convention Center. Southbound 5 still dragging from about 85th into Seattle. And southbound 405 is heavy getting to 522. This report brought to you by Capital One. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. Discover a banking experience built for you at CapitalOne.com/reimagine what's in your wallet. I'm Emery Martin. That's your Sports Radio 950 KJR Track.
Win your trip to our 2017 iHeartRadio Music Festival, hosted by Ryan Seacrest. Over 20 of the greatest performers on the planet. September 22nd and 23rd at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Listen to Win Your Trip.
Capital One is the proud marquee partner of the iHeartRadio Music Festival. So cardholders, make sure to have your Capital One card with you at the Daytime Village presented by Capital One to unlock exclusive opportunities. See you in Vegas.
Don't miss the largest sale of the summer, the Albertley Appliance Seafair Sale, August 12th and 13th. Sizzling hot store-wide deals on the largest selection of major brand appliances in the Northwest. Sale pricing celebrated at all 5 locations: Seattle, South Center, Linwood, Bellevue, and Tacoma. Don't miss out on the largest appliance sale of the summer, the Albertley Appliance Seafair Sale, August 12th and 13th. Log on to albertley.biz for details. Don't miss this sale.
Hey guys, it's Santi back here. The brand new palatial showroom of Burien Toyota is now open. This place is going to revolutionize your car buying experience. Trust me, come celebrate with Burien Toyota during their special grand opening weekend, August 18th through the 20th. Enjoy a taco truck tailgate, shack barbecue, adopt a pet day through Burien Cares, and an appearance by the Seahawk mascot Blitz. Plus, you can check out their huge selection of new and pre-owned vehicles while you're there. The new Burien Toyota, 1st Avenue South, a mile west of SeaTac Airport, in the center of the known world, or online at BurienToyota.com.
You hear Shuttle Express, you think, oh, they'll just get you to the airport. But no, they take you anywhere you need to go. And now it's even easier to book their exclusive black car services with the brand new Shuttle Express app. This includes sedans, SUVs, and their exclusive vans, assuring that you'll get to your destination safely, on time, and stress-free. So, do you need a ride? Download the free Shuttle Express app, available in the App Store. Shuttle Express. They drive, you chill.
High above the Columbia River on the cliffs of East Wenatchee, the Highlander Golf Course is waiting to be challenged and enjoyed. Yes, indeed, it's time for a road trip to the dry side. The Highlander Golf Course boasts some of the best views in eastern Washington and a superior level of customer service. Tee times online at HighlanderGC.com. Come play with us at Highlander Golf Course in East Wenatchee, where the sun shines over 300 days a year and pars and birdies await. Come play the dry side.
Here's some car laws you might not know about. In Alabama, it's illegal to drive blindfolded. Oklahoma, it's actually illegal to read comic books while you're driving. Rather specific, but here's something else you might not know. TrueCar also helps people get used cars. Hey, it's Doug here. With their certified dealer network and nationwide inventory of nearly 1 million used cars, you'll enjoy real pricing on actual inventory and a simple buying experience, whether you buy new or used. When you're ready to buy a new or used car, check out TrueCar and enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Some features not available in all states.
At Carl's Jr., we're all about classic food and proving people wrong. Folks said we couldn't be known for the juiciest chicken sandwiches around, so we do chicken the right way. Juicy, never dry. Our charbroiled club barbecue and Hawaiian chicken sandwiches have no antibiotics ever. And charbroiling, that seals in the bold flavor. And that tastes like proving people wrong. The new juicy charbroiled chicken sandwiches, only at Carl's Jr. Get the Hawaiian before it's gone. Hawaiian chicken sandwich available for a limited time only at participating restaurants. No antibiotics ever, refers only to chicken breast fillet.
Macy's has everything you need to make this your best year ever. From the dorm room to the classroom, get set to shine in cutting-edge streetwear, on-the-go active looks, the flirtiest dresses, denim for days, and so much more. Plus, you'll find the chic essentials to turn your room into a hangout hotspot. Macy's makes it easy to win this fashion season with cool styles and major savings. Shop all the hottest back-to-school looks now and make this your best year ever at Macy's.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You know, we worked so hard to get to this point. We're very happy with how things have turned out through the offseason and getting our guys together.
Coming to you live from the VMAC, this is the 12th Man Roundtable, Training Camp Edition.
I think that the maturation of our teams, we know how to play, we know how to win. You know, and ultimately, we believe in one another.
With Greg Bell of the Tacoma News Tribune, Seattle Times writer Bob Condota, KJR's Hugh Millen, and Mitch in the Morning.
Okay, Bob Condota and Greg Bell and Hugh Breedlove, little mini 12th man roundtable as we sit here at the VMAC. Bob, are you as convinced without Jeremy Lane available and with the way Shaq looks out there that these guys are grinning like, what do they say, Cheshire cats?
Cheshire cat, yeah.
They're not saying too much publicly because they don't want to heap too much on him publicly, but they are ready to hand over the corner's role opposite of Richard Sherman to Shaq Griffin. I'm asking if you
I
feel
still think Jeremy Lane's got a chance to win that.
You do?
I don't totally discount that Lane is the starter there.
Okay.
I mean, they're all three going to play a lot.
Right.
It's not necessarily.
But one's going to be an outside
no
guy,
doubt.
and one guy's going to be more of a.
I mean, before Lane got hurt, we still saw it primarily that Lane started outside, then moved inside, and Griffin came outside. So I still think that's on the table as an option, but we'll see. I think I think you still need to see him play in games a little bit to see what you have.
You see Shaq getting beat out there in practice?
I'm a bad one to ask because I didn't see all these practices while I was gone.
That's right. You were in Canton,
so
right?
Greg's probably got a much better handle on what's
Does
been
Shaq
happening
get
in
beaten
practice
out there from time to time? Do you say to yourself, oh, you're shaking your head no?
Well, the only time, and I think Hugh might have mentioned a little while ago, the in routes, the inside routes, that's what everyone said coming out of college was his weakness. And maybe some of that, but some of that's also zone coverage. Sometimes they're handing off, and the plays they when they got out of minicamp, they said, well, we want to see him make plays on the ball. He wasn't allowed to do that in OTAs. Well, he's making plays on the ball. So now the next step is, okay, now we want to see him bring guys to the ground and play an actual game, which he hasn't done yet, and we'll see that starting on Sunday.
Right. With Jeremy Lane injured, I guess this conversation. I mean, there's certain guys that just seem to be hurt a lot and unavailable a lot, and he's had some serious injuries. He's had some nagging injuries. How much of this consideration does the coaching staff and the GM have to say, the guy, it's tough to keep him on the field?
Well, they're paying him a lot of money this year, so I think they'll try to get him on the, they don't have, next year they can maybe do that, but this year they are paying him a lot. So I think if he's healthy, they'll try to find a way to get him out there.
Do you think it's a consideration as to who your starter is? Is it only Jeremy Lane's production versus Shaquille's production, or is Jeremy Lane's injury history a part of what you decide to do in terms of who starts and who plays where and all
Injury
that
history,
stuff?
so you want to take some reps off of the guy?
I'm just asking.
Yeah, I think
I'm
it
just
should
asking.
be. I think it should be. If a guy has shown himself to be injury prone and all other things are being equal, that variable, then I would say, yeah, take the guy who's injury prone and try and reduce his reps.
But the thing is, to me, there's a huge drop-off, though, from those three to everybody else. So, I mean, those three are going to be
Who
on the field.
who is everybody
It's
else?
DeAndre Elliott and Nico Thorpe. And,
Okay.
I mean, so I
The three,
I don't,
when you say
I don't
three,
see
you're
a way
talking
where
Richard
Lane's
Sherman?
not playing a lot because I don't know who else. I don't know who else would beat him out. Those three guys are going to be on the field 70-75% of the time, regardless of the role between Lane and Griffin. So,
Well, let's also consider the fact that Lane has never had an every down position in this defense. He's been a nickel specialist that plays inside, and now you've got a third-round draft pick who has all the physical skills to be an every down outside guy. That's why you drafted him.
Right.
I think that Jeremy Lane was only playing outside because he was the bridge until they got someone to take Deshaun Shedd's place while he was injured. And we haven't yet seen a season or even half a season of Jeremy Lane as an outside every down cornerback.
And early in the team period, you guys saw Nico Thorpe got just toasted on a go route. Russ it was just an easy.
Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, and Lockett Lockett had 2.5 yards of separation in a blink of an eye. And that's great on the offensive side of things, but that's the number one thing that the defense, you play a single high defense, you've got to have a guy who can defend the fade, and he really failed on that particular play.
Bob, what have you seen from what should we look for on Sunday from the three young safeties? I've asked you this before. Their names are Hill, Thompson, and Tyson. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
The three guys.
Tyson's not really a safety anymore.
Okay, so they moved him into corner. But let's just say those three rookie defensive backs that were drafted in the mid to late rounds of the Seahawks draft in April that we haven't talked a lot about. Obviously, special teams a big part of those guys' job. What about in opportunities they'll get on Sunday?
Yeah, well, I think they'll play a lot because I don't think they're going to have Earl and Cam out there too much. I think they will probably want to get those guys out there just enough, and especially Earl maybe to just kind of get that over with, get him a series or two and hope he hits somebody, and then he's just kind of past that because I do think that's still a big moment for Earl probably.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, the last three quarters would probably be nothing. But those guys, I don't know how much they'll want to play Bradley McDougall. They'll probably want to play him some so he gets familiar with the defense. For sure.
Which one of those guys or all of them are going to have trouble making the team? Sounds like
Tyson will. But Tyson's a corner. I mean, I don't care what they – I don't know what they got him listed.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
But he's a corner. I think Tyson's going to have trouble making the team. Yeah, I see him as one of the odd men out.
Try to get him on the practice
corner,
squad somehow.
Unless you decide to keep him instead of – the problem – he's playing primarily nickel. So, I mean, I guess he'd probably have to beat out DeAndre Elliott to be the backup nickel to make the roster the way I see it.
How about the two safeties, Greg?
I'm interested what Tedrick Thompson does. He's supposed to be the cover guy in that Colorado system that has such a great secondary. He hasn't had a ton of opportunities. McDougald's taken some of his reps because McDougald's also a free safety and strong safety, and they bounce him on between both positions so far.
And Hill's been hurt a lot lately.
Hill may not probably won't play based on the last 5 days of him not practicing at all. So I don't think he's going to even be on the field on Sunday.
All right.
I think Tedrick Thompson has kind of struggled. Kerr beat him yesterday on a go route. Bradley McDougald had a play that caught my eye yesterday where he was down, not in the free safety deep in the hole, but he was down in what's called sky coverage, that curl flat area on the wide side. And right at the onset of the play, he went screaming out underneath the split end in his zone responsibilities, underneath his zone responsibility, and it immediately caught my eye. Well, that's not the normal angle that those guys take. But then when you look at the formation with the three receivers to the other side and the running back not threatening, that was actually the proper course to take, even though that's not the usual course to take. And right there, that just represented to me an example of why they acquired him. He's a veteran. A pretty, you could say a mid-level starter in this league, or, he could start for a lot of teams.
Well,
that experience flashed right then on that play. And he started for Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why he's here. To my eye, he looks like a guy who could play. And that experience That's one example we could cite more, and I expect to see more.
Let's go back and say you're not exactly sure why he's here. What does that mean?
Oh,
he should be starting somewhere else.
Yeah.
No place
Why would he? Why would he be where
okay.
Cam Chancellor and Earl are when he could be a starting free safety? In
He
this
just might have thought he doesn't know what Earl's situation is. Is Earl going to make it back? And you get the offer, you don't have all day to think about it sometimes when you get those free agent offers, and you kind of just have to.
But this is really big. I mean, this is a great depth add in my mind.
Yeah.
Cable was tinkering yesterday.
He was. Jordan Roos, the first time at left guard, undrafted free agent from Purdue. They spent $20,000 on, which is big coin for undrafted free agent signing bonuses. And then Ethan Posick got his first team scrimmaging at center. He was the third string center with Austin Davis, but nevertheless, that showed what they think could be his role in this team was a backup center. And then the question becomes, well, do you really keep Joey Hunt if you think Ethan Posick can be a backup center on game days and also play guard and tackle? And that's Posick's value right now. Every day somebody else is starting somewhere else on the offensive line. Everyone said, well, this has to end soon. It didn't end soon until the end of August last year. I'm not sure it's going to end until the couple preseason games, 3 preseason games. They're going to need, I think, that third preseason game of the starting line playing into the second half for them to know what they have in 5 spots. Oday Abushi, to me, has gotten the lead on the right guard spot over Mark Lewinsky because of his experience and his toughness. He shows a little bit of toughness and don't mess with me out there. And they brought him in to be the guy to nurture the pups, and that's the role. You're not going to cut a guy or stick him deep on the bench. I think he's going to play a larger role than we first imagined.
Okay, so let's have the age-old conversation. There's the obvious benefits of finagling and shifting and shuffling because you want to see what each guy brings to the table at
5
different
best
positions,
guys.
right? So there's that. But the drawback is also the obvious, which is you don't give anybody a chance. You don't give 5 guys at the same position day after day after day after day a chance to play. How do you weigh one, Bob, versus the other?
Well, I mean, we see what they do, so I mean, they're always going to want to do that to move guys around because you could play the same 5 guys together all of camp and then a sprained ankle, and suddenly you've got to go back to that. So that's part of what they're trying to do in camp is you sort of try to account for every eventuality that you're going to get to it. I do think this is a year where I agree with Greg. They will probably wait until that third game because I don't know how much time they're going to get or want to try to get with a lot of these guys, and especially Jokel, we see still being sort of limited, in some of this stuff. So I think their ability to get him out there every single snap with those guys and
has given
and do
some
that
opportunity to shift around a little bit. Yeah,
but I think that's sort of forced on them a little bit. That I don't think they can't have him out there every single snap as much as they would like right now.
It wouldn't shock me if Glowinski is back to left guard. I mean, the fact that Jokel is having issues with the knee, the major ACL, MCL, and the meniscus,
October.
and he's not able to practice. He's wearing a brace. He's clearly favoring it. So he didn't play particularly great when he was healthy. Now he's hurt. Oday Abushi is coming on. I agree with you guys. He looks good, and Pete Carroll came on with us and he said, hey, put some of this line issues on me because I made decisions for us to go younger. We're better now bringing in these guys. So a guy like Oday Abushi would be, a natural to keep at right guard. If Jokel's knee can't handle it and what have you, Glensky has the whole year as a left guard. Would it shock me? We've been talking about Glensky staying on the right side, but that might be a rotation we see.
That's $7 million guaranteed for Jokel. That would be down to 2.
That's right, 7.25.
They're going to throw him out there as much as they possibly can. But let's face it, what they've done and what they continue to do hasn't worked. This has been the Achilles of this team for years. Even when they won the Super Bowl, I thought Russell Wilson's excellence overcame the offensive line, and it hasn't gotten worse since then. I think they need 5 guys, the continuity of that. But like you said, if they can't even have Jokel out for consecutive days on the field, then you can have the 5 guys continuity.
I saw where, Bob, it was either you or somebody in the Times talked a little bit about Quentin Jefferson yesterday in practice. He's a long kind of lost, forgotten guy among Seahawks fans, at least for me. He was drafted. They drafted a few defensive linemen last year. They drafted a few defensive linemen this year. Some guys are considered kind of run-stuffing, draw double teams and let linebackers make plays in the running game. Other guys are thought of if they pop, they might be able to get some heat on a quarterback from an interior defensive line position. Now, he was gone last year. What was the injury? I don't even know what the injury was.
Well, the knee injury was he broke his hand like the first game, and then he suffered a knee injury a couple of weeks after
All of a
that.
sudden, I'm seeing his name, and I'm reading it a little bit, and we're talking about him a little bit. Talk about, with the Malik McDowell absence, whether he is a poor man's, sorry for the lack of a better explanation, a poor man's Malik McDowell that can get in the creases and get into the quarterback.
Well, when they drafted him in the 5th round last year, it was because they thought he was a defensive tackle that could rush the passer out of Maryland, and it wasn't that he was just a run stuff 3 technique, get the linemen off the linebacker guys, because they already had that in Reuben, and they didn't
Reed.
need
Reed was going to be that guy,
and they didn't need that, so they did get him for his pass rush ability. And as Bob said, he didn't have a chance to show it. In the summer, he broke his hand, and then he was out in October with a knee injury that put him on IR. Now he's back. He's practicing almost since day one of training camp. And because McDowell is out for maybe the entire season, he gets a role he probably didn't expect to have. The Seahawks probably didn't expect to use him this much. These preseason games are big for him to see if he can do the role. No, not run downs, passing downs. I still think eventually what's going to happen is what's been happening in the last couple of years, that on passing downs it's going to be Frank Clark and Michael Bennett inside as the tackles, with Cliff Averill and either Cassius Marsh or whoever else if Deion Jordan finally gets healthy, whoever they end up putting as an outside edge rusher. But they're going to have to go with hybrid ends over as the defensive tackle because they still don't have that defensive tackle they want. They thought they had in McDowell to pass rush.
Hugh, how frustrating for a Seahawks fan is it to stand out here day after day after day and watch at the beginning of practice big number 95 walk by you? A mammoth of a human being who was a 3rd overall pick. What was he for the Dolphins? A pass rushing 3rd over. That's the size of that guy with no pads on, sneakers, and just walking by like, dare I say it? I would never say that he doesn't want to play. Of course he wants to play, but there's like no end in sight. Like, I don't even know what's wrong with him. He doesn't even look like there's anything wrong with him.
He hasn't been on the field yet.
He's a 3rd. He was picked 3rd overall. And how big is he? How tall and how big is he? 6. I mean, to get after the quarterback.
6'6" high twos.
They got him, and he's walking by you, and you're like, son, get out there.
Yeah.
Get out there and play. I want to watch you play.
Yeah, he's on the all sunflower seed team right now. That's about all.
What's his injury? What's the problem?
He had a knee. He missed all of last year with the knee injury, and then in the spring they found there was some other stuff in there they had to go clean up. But I sort of figured he'd be ready by now, given what they said in the spring. So
if they still had the receipt on that signing, they would have returned him by now because he's damaged goods when he arrived here. They didn't know he would need cleanup surgery when he got here.
God.
But if I read it right, he's at $670,000, no signing bonus.
Yeah,
I mean, it's literally the most.
Right.
I don't want to say insulting, but it's the least impactful contract he could have possibly signed. He has all the look of a guy that ain't going to be here.
Which obviously showed he had no.
He had nothing.
Yeah.
But it was a huge upside deal for the Seahawks, a no-risk signing that if he was healthy and could get on the field.
God.
Same with Marcus Smith.
With Marcus Smith. He's not on the field either.
And that shows you what they think about their defensive line depth, that they still aren't, they're still trying to do.
I watch that guy walk by me, and I say, can I just switch places with him? I'll go out there and play. Can I look like that for a day? Can I look like that and have the measurables that apparently he had coming out of Oregon? And my God,
but you hear about his attitude, just kind of, the wheels kind of coming off in that regard, and questions about, his love of the game and what have you. And it's quickly, it is amazing how quickly a guy can be perceived as a bust, and in fact, by any reasonable definition, is a bust.
Yeah.
And yet, you see, on the hoof, there's not many guys
Dick
look better
Vitale
on
would call him. He's on his all-airport team.
Yes,
he looks
he is.
great in the airport
Yes,
when he gets off the plane. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Enjoy camp as we continue with the program live from the VMAC. Mitch in the morning on 950 KJR with you, Breed Love Miller. Mitch in the morning continues from the VMAC, the Virginia Mason Athletic Center, on a kind of a nice looking Thursday morning. Nice and warm. We haven't complained about the weather since we've been out here, have we?
Yeah.
Look at you.
All morning since 6.
Look at you. And you know what the best thing about you being out here at training camp is and watching practice today? You know what the best thing about it is?
Uh-oh.
You can't crack up the car anymore while you're here until you get back into the damn thing.
Oh, gosh.
Don't be blaming your neighbors, your parking neighbors, for cracking up your car. Don't be blaming me. I don't want to be blamed by that.
I'm either getting old or I don't know. I'm crumbling.
We started way back at 6 o'clock with you criticizing women drivers. You know that. It's 4 hours.
Yeah.
4 hours ago, you came right on board.
Yeah.
Right at 6 o'clock. Bam. Female drivers, depth perception. You started giving me statistics to back up that ladies.
I didn't give any statistics. Don't start trying to.
You said
make
you've
up
seen
bits.
studies that females have worse depth perception than males, and that makes them. And then you said I drive like a chick.
Yeah.
So I'm not
driving
putting
like
words
a
in
chick,
your
and
mouth.
then you said, "Whoa, hey," and I said, "Hey."
I've never seen these studies that say that women have worse depth perception.
The depth perception makes it more difficult for the average woman to parallel park than it does for an average
So
man.
women are not as good a parallel parker as a male.
Their depth perception.
Yeah.
Again, obviously it's a generalization. I'm sure the best woman in depth perception is going to be better than an average man. But hey, I didn't write the damn study, but it's out there.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sure there's thousands of things that women are better than men at. I see it every day. Right? I live it.
Okay, I'll bail you out.
Hey, I'm married 19 years. My wife and I are equals. We got a great marriage. But you know what we also do? We have fun talking about. You can have fun talking about the differences between men and women. It doesn't make them, one better than the other.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes we do too much hand-wringing about stuff that isn't important. Be upset about stuff that's legit, right?
This isn't legit?
I think this. I think that.
Oh, boy. Hugh's got something to say, ladies and gentlemen. Part 2. Go ahead. What do you think?
I was making fun of the caveman male perception of women can't drive. And when I said, yeah, I'm driving like a chick. I banged into the damn. There's this concrete. There's a concrete block that's like 2 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
And in the fluster of all this traffic and everything, like a chick, I ran into this thing. That's what I said at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And so I'm poking at the perception. And
by the way, you're not going to win a battle with that thing when you run into that thing. That thing's going to win.
God.
How much does that thing weigh?
That would win a battle against a Sherman tank. I mean, what a dork move by me.
Oh,
dear. Just a full-blown dork. Oh.
All right, what are you looking for in practice today? You got 30 seconds, 30 to 45. Say anything in particular that you'd like to see and you're going to focus on in practice today to share with our listening audience tomorrow at 6 a.m. sharp.
What
are you looking at?
Just locked in on how much damn revolving they're doing on the line.
Yeah. You don't like that. You'd like to
Well,
see them
I would
settle
say
on
this.
something and do it.
No, I'm not saying it's not the prudent course for this line.
Yeah.
But if you go out and say, okay, show me the top 10 or 12 or even top half of the league.
Yeah.
The top 16 offensive lines in pro football.
Yeah.
And you go to a training camp, there's going to be a lot more continuity in terms of the reps, and the ones are playing, they're the one group. The twos are the twos, and you're not going to see all this shuffling around. So they do a lot of shuffling around here, and in part, obviously, because they have the lowest paid offensive line in football, and they're just trying to throw things against the wall and see what sticks.
Okay. And what has stuck so far for you? Besides Justin Britt at center. Anything?
That's it.
Justin Britt at center.
I think that
they're
I think
1
Fant,
for 5.
I think
they're 1 for 5.
There's reason to be optimistic about Fant. I said a year ago that this is crazy to be putting him out there on the varsity. This spoke to me as practice squad. It had practice squad written all over it. Having said that, now that they went through 2016 with him out there on the job training, you see the extra 20 pounds. Now there's reason to think, hey, this may work out.
Okay. All right. Hubie, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. 9:54 on 950 KJR. Let's get out of the way. Chuck and Puck are next on 950 KJR. Here we go.
I hate the weasel. The new Chuck and Puck show is next.